Chapter 764. The deafening explosion caused the castle to shake violently as if there was an earthquake. The ancestor's expression changed slightly and he snorted angrily. How dare he use explosives to destroy my castle? I will make him pay 1,000 times the price. Fang Shishir smiled proudly and looked at the door, waiting for Tang Jing to rush in. In the explosion, the ground had sunk a lot, and many enemies were sent flying in all directions. Tang Jing took the opportunity to break through the layers of defense, leaving the werewolves and vampires behind, and rushed to the top floor of the castle. Stop him! The enemies quickly caught up, but their speed was no match for Tang Jing's. Whoosh! Tang Jing stopped in his tracks, took a deep breath, and stared at the tightly shut door. He had already arrived at the highest level. That huge scarlet door was like a bloody mouth, making one's hair stand on end. Fang Shishir was locked inside, and he could save her if he rushed in. However, he knew very well that behind the door would be 1,000 times more dangerous, but he still kicked the door without hesitation. Bang! The door fell off and flew out. Tang Jing's figure flashed and rushed into the room. His spirit was highly tensed. At this moment, the pursuers arrived and stopped at the door, glaring angrily. However, they did not enter through the door, as if it was a pool of lightning, and they would not take half a step into it. Huh? Tang Jing frowned suspiciously, and his gaze fell on Fang Shishir and another middle-aged man in the middle of the room. Seeing that Fang Shishir was safe and sound, he was greatly relieved and could not wait to call out, "Shishir, how are you?" Since Tang Jing appeared, Fang Shishir's mouth was brimming with a smile, and she said firmly, "I'm fine." The stone in Tang Jing's hand fell a little further, and his pupils shrank as he stared at the middle-aged man, recognizing that he was the ancestor at a glance. This was the impression in the prince's mind, as if it had become his own. Fang Shishir couldn't move, and Tang Jing didn't act rashly. Instead, he looked at the ancestor warily. The primogenitor also looked at him and compared him with the information. In the end, he had no choice but to admit that the other party was a little too young. Huaxia was indeed a land blessed by illustrious heroes to have nurtured such a powerful character. "You killed my son." The primogenitor was the first to speak. Tang Jing remained unmoved and coldly said, "Louis committed a heinous crime. He deserved to die. You don't have the right to judge my son." The primogenitor stomped his foot, creating a huge crater in the ground. Tang Jing snorted and said, "The one to judge him is the world's justice, not me." What a glib tongue. "I will make you suffer and watch as your beloved woman dies," the ancestor said with killing intent. Tang Jing raised his war soul sword and said, "You can give it a try. Do you think you can stop me? I want to suck her blood dry. The blood of a young girl is the most delicious." The primogenitor licked his lips with his scarlet tongue and said, "In your dreams." Tang Jing took the initiative and rushed forward with a shout. The war soul sword lit up with a dazzling light and pierced towards the primogenitor. The primogenitor waved his hand and a fishy wind swept over. Tang Jing fiercely collided with this fishy wind and flew backwards. The primogenitor laughed sinisterly and opened his mouth. Two long fangs stretched out and fiercely bit towards Fang Shishir's neck. "No!" Tang Jing turned pale with fright and screamed. His hand loosened and the war soul sword flew towards the primogenitor. The primogenitor glanced at it from the corner of his eyes and suddenly waved his hand. The fishy wind blew and the war soul sword could no longer move forward. The primogenitor sneered and ordered, "Capture him." The werewolves and vampires outside the door rushed forward without a care for their own safety. Like a tide, they surged towards Tang Jing. "Xiao Bai!" Tang Jing bellowed, the Sumera heavens flashed slightly, and Xiao Bai rushed out from the Sumera heavens, spitting out a ball of flame, immediately igniting the enemy at the front. Miserable screams immediately resounded through the clouds, and the enemy's attack immediately slowed down. Tang Jing took this opportunity and fiercely leaped forward, flying towards the primogenitor. Holding onto the War Soul sword, he used the heaven-flying immortal, and in an instant, all of the sword chi condensed on the tip of the sword, thrusting forward. However, that fishy wind was like an unbreakable shield. Even though he used all of his skills, he did not immediately break through. Stop! Tang Zheng roared at the top of his lungs, because he saw that the two fangs had already bitten onto Fang Shishi's neck. The primogenitor raised his head and sneered at him, saying, "I will suck the blood of the woman, the withered flowers, this is truly a pity, but it is also the most beautiful scenery in the world." With that, the ancestor bit down hard, his fangs piercing deep into Fang Shishi's fair skin. Ah! Fang Shishi's beautiful eyebrows were tightly knitted together as she let out a heart-wrenching scream. Tang Zheng's eyes were bloodshot as he roared furiously, "I'm going to kill you, break." He gathered all of his true chi and released it in one go. It turned into sword chi and attacked the fishy wind. Bang! As the stench dissipated, Tang Zheng charged at the primogenitor with his sword in hand. A strange look flashed past the ancestor's eyes. Just as he was about to attack, the War Soul sword had already left Tang Zheng's hand and slashed over. At the same time, another weapon appeared in Tang Zheng's hands, heaven-shocking bow and sun-shooting arrow. When he saw the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows, the ancestor's eyelids twitched. He felt uneasy and felt a trace of danger. He had no choice but to let go of Fang Shishi. Although it had only been a short while, a lot of Fang Shishi's blood had already been sucked away. His face was as pale as paper, his eyes were dim and colorless, and his expression was dispirited. However, she still opened her eyes and looked at the angry Tang Zheng. Instead, a smile appeared on her face. In this life, if there was a man who did not hesitate to give up his life for her, then her life would be enough. The ancestor blocked the War Soul sword's attack with one move, but his eyes were fixed on the heaven-shocking bow. The bowstring trembled, and the shooting sun arrows flew over. In that moment, the aura in the huge room suddenly changed. A berserk aura was born from the shooting sun arrows, and when it arrived in front of the ancestor, the aura had accumulated to its peak. The ancestor's expression was no longer as calm as before. Instead, it became unprecedentedly solemn. His hands extended out from the cloak, and his 10 fingers were as sharp as swords. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. His 10 fingers danced, interweaving into a cold light. Bang! When the shooting sun arrows touched the cold light immediately disintegrated. The attack of the shooting sun arrows did not decrease as it shot towards the ancestor's chest like a hot knife through butter. Stop! The ancestor crossed his hands in front of his chest and grabbed the shooting sun arrows at the last moment. Hua! The ancestor slid out a long gully on the ground and quickly retreated. In the end, he left a big hole in the wall and fell down. Shishi, how are you? Tang Zheng came in front of Fang Shishi and asked anxiously. Fang Shishi's face revealed a happy smile, and said weakly, "I knew you would come to save me, I've been waiting for you." Tang Zheng held her tightly in his arms and said, "Don't speak, you're too weak." Looking at Fang Shishi's weak state, Tang Zheng did not dare to continue fighting, the most important thing now was to save her. He carried Fang Shishi and said, "Let's go, leave this place." He suddenly turned his head and shouted, "Xiao Bai, retreat." Little White's fighting spirit was high. 1 man against 10,000. Although there were many enemies, no one could charge in from the entrance. The blazing flames had already burned many enemies to ashes, causing them to tremble in fear. Xiao Bai heard Tang Zheng's words and cried out. He was not satisfied and spat out a ball of flames, turning the entire room into a sea of flames. Then, he and Tang Zheng retreated to the big hole. Tang Zheng was just about to jump down when a fishy smell came from below. "Careful!" He shouted loudly, and with a thought, the War Soul sword ruthlessly slashed downwards. Xiao Bai also spat out a ball of flames, illuminating the area below. The ancestor was not dead, but his cloak was tattered and he looked somewhat miserable. Tang Zheng secretly sighed, it was a pity that the shooting sun arrows did not kill the other party. Since that was the case, he could not continue fighting. He said, sure, go into Sumeru world and rest for a while. The light on his wrist flashed and Fang Shusher was sucked into Sumeru world. Tang Zheng once again pulled the bow and aimed at the ancestor. The ancestor's eyes flashed coldly, he was somewhat afraid of the shooting sun arrows and hurriedly dodged to the side. So, the shooting sun arrows flew out and the ancestor had no choice but to dodge. Tang Zheng took the opportunity to jump down from the castle. Boom! With a loud sound, the shooting sun arrows did not hit the ancestor, but shot into the castle wall, a huge crack spreading out. Stop! Seeing Tang Zheng retreat, the ancestor roared in anger. This was his headquarters, if he could not stop the enemy, it would be a joke. However, he was also extremely afraid of the bow and arrow in Tang Zheng's hands. He knew that it was definitely a divine armament, otherwise it would not be able to unleash such great power. This was the first time Tang Zheng had used the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows after refining the Aurus core. The explosive power was incomparable to before, and although Tang Zheng was extremely surprised, he did not have the time to investigate further. This was not a bad thing after all. Just as the ancestor wanted to chase after him, he heard another loud sound coming from behind him. Before he could understand what was going on, the huge castle had already pressed down on him. Caught off guard, he was directly pressed down under the ruins of the castle. This castle had been through countless years, but after being ruthlessly bombed by Tang Zheng with explosives and then being hit by the shooting sun arrows, the spiderweb-like cracks were like the last straw that broke the castle's back. The castle collapsed with a loud bang, turning into a pile of ruins. Seeing that, Tang Zheng was overjoyed, this was a heaven-sent opportunity, he ran without looking back, but Xiao Bai had already disappeared without a trace. He turned pale with fright and shouted, Xiao Bai! Creak creak! Xiao Bai scuttled out from the ruins with 2 shooting sun arrows tightly in his hands. Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief and quickly kept the shooting sun arrows. Chapter 765. Get in! Ding Liang's voice rang out. Tang Zheng was startled. Ding Liang had actually rushed in despite the danger. He hurriedly got in and Ding Liang slammed on the accelerator. The car shot out like an arrow. Earlier, the patrols had all been attracted to the castle. When the castle collapsed, they were all buried inside, giving them a chance to escape. In the blink of an eye, the car disappeared into the boundless night. Bang! A loud sound rang out as a figure shot up from the ruins. A pair of huge wings spread out as he floated in the air. It was the ancestor. He wasn't dead, but his clothes were tattered and he looked battered and exhausted. Looking at the ruins below, he raised his head and let out a sharp cry. His voice shook the surroundings as an intense killing intent enveloped this part of the world. The car sped along the road. Tang Zheng's hearing was excellent. Although he was far away, he still heard the scream. His expression became serious. What's wrong? Ding Liang asked with concern. What he had seen and heard tonight was more exciting than the sum of his previous life combined. It made his adrenaline rush. He was also afraid, but in the end, he overcame his fear and came to help Tang Zheng. Seeing that Tang Zheng was not harmed in the slightest, Ding Liang was filled with admiration. Before this, he really did not dare to imagine that there would be someone who could barge into the Rockefeller family, destroy their castle, and still be able to escape unscathed. But Tang Zheng had done it. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he really wouldn't have believed it. At this moment, he looked at Tang Zheng with eyes full of adoration. He was like a groupie who couldn't wait to ask for an autograph. Tang Zheng said indifferently, I'm fine. The Rockefeller family will definitely conduct a large-scale search. Find a safe place for us to stay. Ding Liang snapped his fingers and said confidently, don't worry. I understand the principle of a crafty rabbit having 3 burrows. That's why I've already prepared a safe house. Tang Zheng was worried about Fang Shusher. With a thought, she came out of Sumeru world. When Ding Liang realized that there was someone in the back seat, he panicked and almost hit the car next to him. He stared at the person who suddenly appeared in the rearview mirror. It was the girl in the photo. She was even more beautiful in person than in the photo. You really saved her? Ding Liang asked in surprise. Okay, focus on driving. Tang Zheng checked Fang Shishi's injuries. Strangely, the 2 wounds on her neck were gone, and her skin was as smooth as before. It was as if the ancestor hadn't sucked her blood at all. What's going on? Tang Zheng turned pale with fright and hurriedly asked, Shishi, how do you feel? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Fang Shishi opened her eyes weakly and looked at Tang Zheng in surprise. I'm fine. I just feel weak all over. Also, I'm so cold. Cold? Tang Zheng was stunned for a moment. He quickly took out a set of clothes from Sumeru World and put them on for her. Then, he hugged her tightly in his arms. I'm still cold. Fang Shishi murmured. Tang Zheng's head thumped. This was definitely not normal. Although she had lost a lot of blood, she was still a cultivator. Her body was incomparable to an ordinary person. It was impossible for her to be so weak. He hurriedly circulated the ancient clear heaven scroll. Mixed with pure yang energy, it was warm and comfortable. It was like a huge furnace enveloping Fang Shishi. It's not that cold anymore. It's so comfortable. Fang Shishi's lips curled into a smile. She firmly held on to Tang Zheng's clothes. Shishi, where else do you feel uncomfortable? It's like there's a seed in my body that's sprouting. Something is about to grow. Fang Shishi was silent for a long time. Then, she said doubtfully. Seed. Grow? Tang Zheng was confused. He really didn't understand what was going on. He hurriedly circulated his energy to check her body. There wasn't the slightest difference. Ah, that's not right. Suddenly, he exclaimed. Your cells are dividing and growing faster. It's much faster than mine. This was definitely not normal. Could it be? His heart turned cold. His face suddenly changed. He suddenly thought of a possibility. His heartstrings violently trembled. Because, this situation was too terrifying. Could it be that she was going to become a vampire? There were many legends about vampires in the West. In the past, most people thought that they were fake. But now, it seemed that this was not the case. The most famous legend about vampires was that once a person's blood was sucked by a vampire, they would also become a vampire. Tang Zheng didn't want Fang Shishi to grow 2 long fangs and become a bat-like monster. That's not right. Those young girls who were tied to the pillars in the dungeon also had their blood sucked away. In the end, they turned into dried corpses. They didn't turn into vampires. In fact, he guessed correctly. There was a very important condition for a person to transform into a vampire after their blood was sucked dry, and that was that their blood couldn't be sucked dry. If it was sucked dry, then the person would die and wouldn't transform. The ancestor originally planned to suck Fang Shishi's blood dry in front of Tang Zheng. But he didn't expect Tang Zheng's strength to exceed his expectations and interrupt the process. In the end, Fang Shishi's blood wasn't sucked dry. The mysterious power of vampires had been injected into her body. Her body was transforming step by step. When the transformation was complete, she would become a vampire. This was also why the wound on her neck had disappeared. It was because she was slowly gaining the vampire's ability to automatically heal wounds. Tang Zheng didn't know the specific reason, but he knew that things were bad. Creak. The car finally stopped. Ding Liang took the initiative to open the door. We're here. It's very safe here. No one will find out. You go in first. I'll get rid of the car. This car had been seen in Rockefeller Manor, so it definitely couldn't be driven again. After all, Ding Liang was a spy and had the awareness of anti-reconnaissance. Tang Zheng carried Fang Shishir into the house. Her expression became peaceful, as if there was nothing wrong with her. But Tang Zheng knew that this was just an appearance. It was too deceiving. Shishir, try to circulate your energy. Find out what the feeling you're talking about is. Tang Zheng helped her sit up and instructed. Okay. Fang Shishir did as she was told. After a while, she exclaimed, my teeth are growing. What? Tang Zheng was shocked. His random guess was right. She was really transforming into a vampire bit by bit. Open your mouth. Let me see. Ah. Tang Zheng focused on the teeth in her mouth. Sure enough, two of them seemed to be a little strange. He couldn't help but think of the ancestors' two long fangs. What's wrong with me? Fang Shishir asked curiously. It's nothing. Don't worry. It's just a small problem. Tang Zheng comforted her, but his heart was like an ant on a hot pan. He thought silently, what should I do? I can't let her become a vampire. I'm cold. Suddenly, Fang Shishir shouted again. Tang Zheng hurriedly hugged her. I'm here. Hold me. Before he could finish his sentence, he was stunned. He thought to himself, she keeps complaining about the cold. This must be caused by the transformation process. If I use it to counteract her coldness, will I be able to suppress the transformation process? He wasn't sure, but there was no other way. He could only give it a try. Sure, bear with it. It might be a little painful later. Tang Zheng comforted. What's wrong? Fang Shishir was confused. Is there a big problem with my body? Don't think too much. Be obedient. Fang Shishir looked at him with shining eyes and smiled. With you by my side, no matter how big the pain is, I can bear it. Tang Zheng's heart softened. He clenched his teeth and circulated his power. This time, he was multitasking. Not only was he using the ancient Clear Heaven scroll, but he was also using the Dragon God's secret art. The two sets of mysterious cultivation methods began to circulate according to his own trajectory. The golden core in his dantian quickly rotated. Traces of true qi were born from the golden core. Not only was the true qi mixed with pure yang energy, it was also mixed with dragon qi. Whoosh! Tang Zheng took a deep breath and concentrated. With a thought, his true qi drilled into Fang Shishir's meridians. Ah! Fang Shishir immediately cried out in pain, but she immediately clenched her teeth, not letting herself make a sound. However, the pain was still real. Cultivators have their own true qi. Once the true qi from the outside world enters, it will encounter resistance. Especially the more true qi from the outside world, the stronger the resistance will be. And the person involved will definitely suffer a great deal of pain. Tang Zheng's cultivation was much higher than Fang Shishir's, so his true qi could forcefully break into her meridians, step by step, spreading to her internal organs and meridians. Tang Zheng felt like a knife was twisting, but he was helpless. He could only control his true qi in order to minimize the damage to her. There was an extremely cold force in her meridians that was hidden very cleverly. Previously, it had escaped Tang Zheng's detection. This was something that had never happened before. Unless he increased the amount of true qi, he would definitely not be able to discover it. Previously, when he was probing her injuries, he only used a very weak strand of true qi, so he did not discover this strange point. It must be the work of this cold and gloomy energy. Tang Zheng found his target and let his true qi fill her meridians. Her own true qi was seized by Xian Bing and forced into a corner. Tang Zheng's true qi took over the magpie's nest. Using his own strength, he consumed the cold force bit by bit. However, this was a huge consumption for Tang Zheng. Not only did he consume a lot of his mind, his true qi was almost exhausted. If not for his extraordinary perseverance, he would have already fainted. Fang Shishir was sweating profusely, clenching her teeth and holding on. Tang Zheng was the same. He tried his best to control his true chi and mind, not letting his efforts go to waste. Fortunately, his true chi worked, which greatly boosted his spirit. Time passed by minute by minute. Unknowingly, Tang Zheng's true chi was exhausted. He fell to the ground and fainted. Chapter 766. Dawn arrived. Tang Zheng and Fang Shishir slowly woke up, and the moment they saw each other, their eyes blossomed with joy from the bottom of their hearts. "Shishir, how are you?" Tang Zheng hurriedly asked. Fang Shishir stretched her body and said, "I feel very good." "Are you still cold?" "Not cold." Tang Zheng was still on tenterhooks as he stared at her mouth and stammered, "Your teeth." Fang Shishir understood and immediately opened her mouth and cheered, "My teeth are fine." "Really? They didn't grow back?" Tang Zheng hurriedly looked closer. Her teeth were still snow white and there was no difference. "Are you afraid that I will become a vampire?" Fang Shishir covered her mouth and laughed. Tang Zheng seriously nodded his head. Fang Shishir stretched out her finger and tapped his forehead and said with a smile, "Even if I die, I won't become that kind of monster." Tang Zheng held her hand and said, "Don't say die. You have to accompany me for a lifetime." Fang Shishir's heart was as sweet as honey and her face was filled with a happy smile. "Feel your body and see if there is anything strange," Tang Zheng urged. Fang Shishir nodded her head and closed her eyes. After a while, she opened her eyes and cried out in surprise, "How could this be? My cultivation has increased so much. 6th grade Anidia, I have actually reached the 6th grade Anidia." She was previously only a 1st grade Anidia and now her cultivation had increased by 5 grades. This was truly shocking. Tang Zheng walked step by step. He had never suddenly increased his cultivation by so much. He suppressed his excitement and said, "Is there anything wrong with your body?" As the saying goes, when things are abnormal, there must be a demon. Her cultivation had increased by so much and there was definitely a reason. Perhaps it was because of the cold energy in her meridians. Fang Shishir shook her head, "I feel like I have an endless amount of energy. My body is very strong." Tang Zheng suddenly remembered that her wound had automatically healed and asked, "Shishir, bear with me for a while. I will do an experiment." Fang Shishir looked at him suspiciously. She saw his fingernail lightly cut her finger. A small wound appeared and blood flowed out. "Ah, what are you doing?" Fang Shishir cried out in alarm. "Shishir, don't move." Tang Zheng looked at the wound in a daze. Just as the blood was about to drip from her finger, it suddenly stopped and retreated back into her skin. It was as if she had seen a ghost. Fang Shishir looked at her finger as if it was not her finger. After the blood flowed back, the small wound healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, the skin was as good as new. There was no trace of the wound at all. Hiss! Tang Zheng sucked in a breath of cold air. He did not expect that Fang Shishir would have the ability to automatically heal wounds. Without a doubt, this was caused by the power of vampires. He used his own chi to offset the power of the transformation, but some of the characteristics of vampires remained in Fang Shishir's body. "What is going on?" Fang Shishir asked in confusion. Tang Zheng smacked his lips and organized his words before explaining, "Shishir, this is the ability of vampires to automatically heal wounds. High-level vampires even have immortal bodies. I don't know if you also have this ability." Immortal body? Fang Shishir never thought that she would have this ability. This was a good thing that many ancient kings dreamed of. Could it be that it had fallen into her hands? She shook her head, thinking that it was impossible. Tang Zheng was also not sure. He could not really use a knife to kill her as an experiment. After all, it was too risky. But the ability to heal wounds was already abnormal. Moreover, she did not have the side effects of vampires. She grew bat-like wings and long fangs. Fang Shishir was still a beautiful girl, but her strength was stronger. Tang Zheng was pleasantly surprised. He hugged her and spun her around, shouting, "Sure, you are amazing. This is all thanks to you. If you did not save me, I would have become a monster." Fang Sure stood on tiptoe and kissed him affectionately. Cough cough. A dry cough broke the sweet world between the two of them. Ding Liang was standing at the door, looking at them awkwardly. Fang Sure quickly broke free from Tang Zheng's arms, her face red. Tang Zheng was thick-skinned, as if nothing had happened. "Last night when I came in, I saw that you were motionless. You must have been healing, so I did not disturb you," Ding Liang said. "Thank you. How is the situation outside?" Ding Liang's face was cold. He said in a deep voice, "The situation is not optimistic. Even the government has been alarmed. The police have already launched a carpet search. Can you still go out now?" "It's very difficult." Ding Liang shook his head. Sure has been rescued. After all, the Rockefeller family is a local snake. Their patriarch's cultivation is higher than mine. It is best to leave this place for the time being," Tang Zheng said. Ding Liang agreed, "Yes, it is safest to go back to Huaxia. Although the Rockefeller family is powerful, their infiltration work in Huaxia is not optimistic. In Huaxia, they can't make any big waves." "But how can we leave?" Fang Sure asked worriedly. "All the airports and ports have been monitored. As long as you show up, you will be found," Ding Liang said worriedly. He had been lurking in this country for decades and knew the situation here very well. Tang Zheng said that if Gui Qiansui was here, it wouldn't be so difficult. Just like when they left the island nation, they could easily leave from the bottom of the sea. Seeing Tang Zheng frowning, Ding Liang comforted, "There will always be a way. Don't worry. At worst, I will gather all the forces of the China National Security Bureau in the Atlantic Empire to escort you back to your country." Last night, Ding Liang had already reported the operation to Suing Tian. When he heard that Tang Zheng directly destroyed the Rockefeller family's manor, Suing Tian knew that things were bad. He ordered Ding Liang to ensure the safety of Tang Zheng and Fang Sure at all costs. They must be escorted back to their country. Tang Zheng looked at Ding Liang gratefully and shook his head to refuse, "No need. The National Security Bureau's years of infiltration in the Atlantic Empire cannot be destroyed because of me. Otherwise, it will give the Dragon Group a reason to stir up trouble. But if we don't do this, how will you leave? Let me think for a bit." Tang Zheng patted his forehead as he racked his brains. Dong dong dong. A burst of rapid knocks on the door interrupted their conversation. "Someone is coming." The three immediately became alert. Ding Liang shushed them and whispered, "Don't make a sound. I will go and see what the situation is. Be careful." Ding Liang went to open the door. Tang Zheng and Fang Sure were hiding in the bedroom door, but their eyes were fixed on the door. "What's the matter?" Ding Liang opened the door and asked calmly. "Sir, may I ask if you have seen these two people before?" A few police officers asked while holding Tang Zheng and Fang Shure's photos. "Sorry, I haven't seen them," Ding Liang said. "These two are terrorists. They are very dangerous. We have to investigate door to door to eliminate all possible dangers." "Sir, we have to go in and search," the policeman said aggressively. Ding Liang pretended to be angry and said, "Sorry, this is my home. You can't come in." The policemen looked at each other and suddenly fiercely pushed open the door and said, "We are carrying out official duties. If you don't cooperate, then we will arrest you for obstructing official duties." Ding Liang staggered back. He wanted to argue, but the policeman had already pulled out his gun and pointed it at him. He was shocked. If he let them in, then he would be exposed. He remembered Su Yingtian's order. He must not let anything happen to Tang Zheng and Fang Sure. So, he resisted and at the same time shouted, "Tang Zheng, run." The policeman immediately reacted and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Ding Liang thought that he was finally going to become a martyr. He even saw the muzzle of the gun spitting out flames. But in the next second, he found his body floating and quickly retreating. "Let's go together." Tang Zheng rushed over to save him. With a palm strike, an earth-shattering momentum slammed into the group of policemen. They were immediately sent flying. Then, Tang Zheng and the other two escaped from the back door. "Get in the car." Ding Liang dashed into another car that had been prepared long ago, carrying the two of them and roaring away like a bolt of lightning. Woo-woo sirens sounded and several police cars chased after them. Ding Liang stepped on the accelerator and the car sped up. Suddenly, the sound of a propeller came from above. It was actually a helicopter that caught up. Da-da-da. The bullets were directly greeted and the trunk of the car was like a sieve. F***CK. Heaven and earth, this is really a big investment. Ding Liang unwillingly roared. Tang Zheng poked his head out. With a flash of sword light, War Soul flew into the sky. With a crash, it directly cut open the belly of the helicopter. It fell to the ground and turned into a cloud of black smoke. Ding Liang's eyes lit up. He gave a thumbs up and sincerely praised, "Too cool." Huff huff. Tang Zheng hurriedly gasped for breath. Last night, when he healed Fang Shishir, his true qi was almost exhausted. This morning, he had only recovered a little. So when he rashly used the Imperial Sword technique, he actually felt powerless. "I need to find a quiet place to recover as soon as possible." Now that he was in a life and death situation, he could not multitask and recover his strength while facing the enemy. Although he had temporarily gotten rid of the police, Tang Zheng knew that since he had appeared, with the technology of the Atlantic Empire, it would be difficult for him to hide. If it was an ordinary police, it would be easier to deal with them. The key was that if the ancestor came, then he would really be helpless. "Where are we going?" Ding Liang asked at a loss. "To the city center." Now that they were in the suburbs, they were too obvious a target. It was better to go into the city and blend into the sea of people. Ding Liang's eyes turned and also thought of this point. He agreed, "Okay." Stepping on the accelerator, the tires rubbed against the ground, causing white smoke to rise as they sped towards the city center. Fang Shishir held Tang Zheng's hand and said, "I will face the enemy later. You rest first." Tang Zheng squeezed out a smile and said, "Don't worry, with me here, you will be fine." Chapter 767. Charge. Although the road ahead was filled with obstacles, Tang Zheng was not prepared to retreat. He had to find a quiet place to recover his power. In such a big city, such a place was easy to find. "Okay, charge." Ding Liang gritted his teeth and stepped on the accelerator. The engine let out a deafening roar. Woo! The car shot out like an arrow from a bow. "Stop!" The police used their loudspeakers to stop the car, but they were met with a head-on collision. Bang! The police car was sent flying, revealing a narrow space. The car slipped through like a fish in water. Bang! 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 Gunshots rang out like firecrackers, hitting the car and causing sparks to fly. However, the car sped away. Many police cars were chasing after it with their sirens blaring. Boom! Suddenly, a loud noise came from the roof of the car. Tang Zheng's heart tightened. There's someone on the roof. Pfft! A sharp claw broke through the roof of the car and clawed down. Tang Zheng raised his sword and chopped off the claw, causing fresh blood to splatter all over the carriage. Crash! The roof of the car was blown away. A huge werewolf tried to jump in. Although it only had one arm left, it was still murderous. I'll deal with it. Fang Shishir volunteered. She jumped up and slapped the werewolf's body. The werewolf staggered and fell to the ground. However, his claws were still firmly embedded in the body of the car as he was dragged forward. The werewolf's skin was coarse and thick. With a kick of its hind legs, it jumped back onto the car and fiercely pounced on Fang Shishir. Shishir, use my war spirit. Fang Shishir raised war spirit and slashed down. The werewolf's head was separated from its body and flew out. Fang Shishir's heart pounded. It was the first time in her life that she had experienced such a thrilling battle. It was inevitable that she was overwhelmed with emotions. Ding Liang's heart almost jumped out of his chest. He looked at his car that had turned into a convertible. His face stiffened and he forced out a bitter smile. He did not see the werewolf face to face last night, so the shock he received was not small. Turn the corner up ahead. Stop and get off. Tang Zheng shouted. Caw. The car stopped in an alley. The three of them got out of the car and were about to escape when suddenly, a rough off-road vehicle stopped in front of them. The three of them were stunned. Just as they were about to make the first move, they saw the car window roll down, revealing a beautiful face. Eh. The three of them widened their eyes as they recognized this person. Princess N. Tang Zheng was confused. Wasn't she in Huaxia? Why was she here? Fang Shishir's eyes widened as she stared at the princess of the royal family, who had appeared in all the newspapers and was rumored to have many scandals with Tang Zheng. It turned out that she was even more beautiful and noble than in the photos. Ding Liang's jaw almost dropped. Why did Princess N also come out? He felt like he was in a dream. Princess N only had eyes for Tang Zheng. She looked at his surprised expression proudly and raised her eyebrows. She said valiantly, "Get in." Tang Zheng knew that the situation was urgent, so he did not ask any questions. He pulled Fang Shishir and got in. Ding Liang's feet were as light as a feather. He almost climbed into the car. Sitting in a car driven by a princess, he never dreamed that he would be treated like this. Whoosh! The off-road vehicle sped out and disappeared into the endless traffic. The pursuing police saw the target car, but the target was nowhere to be found. Why are you in the Atlantic Empire? Tang Zheng saw that there were no pursuers and finally asked. And smiled. I thought you wouldn't ask. Hee, Master told me that you came to the Atlantic Empire to save senior sister, so I came to see if there was anything I could help with. After all, I am more familiar with this place than you. Master, senior sister. Fang Shishir was confused. Who was she talking about? Princess N turned her head and looked at Fang Shishir. Senior sister, nice to meet you. Master often talks about you. Fang Shishir was startled. She finally knew that she was the senior sister that Princess N was talking about. Tian Chanzi also took her in as a disciple, so you are from the same sect. Tang Zheng hurriedly explained. Fang Shishir suddenly understood and politely replied, Nice to meet you. I came just in time this time. As far as I know, the Rockefeller family and the government have already set up an inescapable net. They are bound to capture you, or kill you. Princess N said, her eyes slightly shining. Your action last night was really amazing. You directly destroyed the Rockefeller family's nest. You should know that no one has dared to do this in the past 100 years. Tang Zheng was expressionless. If I had to do it again, I would do it again. Unfortunately, the Rockefeller family's patriarch is too powerful. I didn't have the chance to kill him. Princess N excitedly smiled. Mr. Knight, you are really handsome. The outside world had always been rumored that Tang Zheng was her mysterious knight. Therefore, she couldn't help but praise him with this word. Fang Shishir slightly frowned. She was naturally clear about this story. Calling Tang Zheng a knight in front of her was very provocative. Do you know why the European countries fell from their altars? And asked. Why? It's because of the Rockefeller family. They are vampires, werewolves, and they have always been in cahoots with the Atlantic Empire's government. Back then, many European royalty and nobles died in the hands of the Rockefeller family. Because of this, the European countries fell, and the Atlantic Empire rose to become the most powerful country in the world. Tang Zheng was shocked. He didn't think that there would be such a thing. Therefore, I am actually very happy to see the Rockefeller family fall. It would be best if they were completely finished. Then, the Atlantic Empire can no longer strut around and act as the world's police. And gloated. Then if you were exposed, wouldn't it involve the Swedish royal family? Tang Zheng curiously asked. Annie shrugged and stared at him with burning eyes. Don't I have you? My knight. I believe that you won't just watch me and my country be bullied by the Rockefeller family, right? Tang Zheng did not reply, but secretly sighed. Of course he would not just stand by and watch. She was a noble princess, and even risked her life to save him. How could he just watch her and her country suffer because of this and not care about it? Annie was a very smart person. Sweden was considered a small country among the European countries, and it was struggling to survive in the cracks of other countries. Although the royal family's prestige still existed, it was more of a symbol. The real life of the royal family wasn't as glamorous as what the outside world saw. In fact, the royal family also had a lot of helplessness and difficulties. As the princess of a country, Annie naturally shouldered the responsibility of the royal family. If she really had a helper like Tang Zheng, then it would be a good thing for the royal family. Perhaps, it could turn the royal family's situation around. Of course, she did not hesitate to put herself in danger to save Tang Zheng, not entirely because of this utilitarian thought, but because she subconsciously acted out of concern for his safety. Of course, she was a person who liked excitement. How could she miss out on such an exciting thing? Moreover, she always wanted to improve her relationship with Tang Zheng. However, Tang Zheng's body was like a thick eggshell that couldn't be touched by fire and water. This was an opportunity, and she naturally couldn't miss it. She looked forward to the relationship between the two of them. Looking at Tang Zheng's expression, Annie's eyes lit up as she knew that her actions were finally effective and that this trip was not in vain. The off-road vehicle drove into a heavily guarded area. The guards respectfully saluted the off-road vehicle with a solemn expression. Looking out of the window, Ding Liang's expression slightly changed as he exclaimed, "The embassy." And smiled. This is the safest place. No one can harm you guys here. I believe that you guys need this place. Thank you. Tang Zheng gratefully replied. He truly needed this place to recover his cultivation. When the few of them got out of the vehicle, they were led to a luxurious suite. Tang Zheng chose a room and immediately recovered his cultivation. Seeing the two women looking at each other awkwardly, Ding Liang hurriedly escaped into a room. Only Fang Shishir and were left in the living room. You and Tang Zheng have known each other for a long time, right? And was the first to break the silence. Fang Shishir nodded her head. I really envy you. You've known him for so long. If I had known him a few years earlier, my life would definitely be more interesting. And said with regret. Fang Shishir still couldn't understand Anne's thoughts. She politely said, "Thank you for saving me this time. This is my duty. After all, he is my knight and has saved my life twice. Once from the hands of pirates and once from the hands of an island nation's assassin." And said with a smile as if she was recalling the thrilling scene. He has always been willing to help others. Yes, so having such a boyfriend is really enviable. Senior sister, you are the happiest woman in the world. And complimented. You are a princess of a country. You are also very happy. I don't know how many girls envy you. And faintly sighed, if I had such an outstanding man to love, then even if the halo above my head was removed, I would still be willing. Fang Shishir's heart thumped. She didn't come with good intentions. Her words seemed to be coveting Tang Zheng. Immediately, she sat up straight and secretly talked with Anne. The women's conversation was in the clouds. Outsiders wouldn't be able to understand the meaning behind it. Tang Zheng didn't have the mind to pay attention to the two women's conversation. He silently revolved his power. His true qi increased little by little. His power recovered little by little. His body was filled with strength. His mind was immersed in Sumi Tian world. There was also an inexhaustible supply of bronze masks. Absorbing the power from them would allow him to quickly increase his true qi. One by one, the bronze masks lost their spiritual power. Together with the terracotta figures, they collapsed and became useless. Time passed minute by minute. His power quickly recovered. The sound of the terracotta figures breaking could be heard in Sumi Tian world. The yin qi in Sumi Tian world was very rich. It was stirred up by the wind and clouds. Hoo. The yin qi gathered and condensed into a hole. It rushed into a wooden box in the darkness. Chapter 768. Tang Zheng sensed something and immediately noticed the change in the wooden box. Isn't this the wooden box I brought out from Lengya Pavilion? At that time, it was placed side by side with the Inferno Divine Palm's wooden box. He had tried his best but was still unable to open it. He never thought that at this moment, it would open for no reason. The wooden box must have absorbed the yin qi earlier, so it opened by itself. He originally had the 9 yang saint body, so how could there be any yin qi in his body? Therefore, he never thought that he could use yin qi to trigger this wooden box. The wooden box had always been in Sumeru world, so it was constantly being soaked in yin qi. Just now, it had absorbed so much yin qi that this change occurred. Strange. Tang Zheng secretly clicked his tongue and looked straight at the wooden box. There was a jade token in the wooden box. The jade token's luster was moving, and one could tell at a glance that it was not an ordinary item. Could it be a cultivation technique? Tang Zheng still remembered that there were many cultivation techniques recorded in the jade token he obtained from the demon race. He even chose the sky-swallowing technique to cultivate. Although the sky-swallowing technique could swallow objects and had many ingenious uses in battle, he had always treated it as a support technique. Sumeru world flashed and a jade token appeared in Tang Zheng's hand. He immediately immersed his divine sense into it and a passage of text was immediately branded in his mind. The jade token's light dimmed and finally with a crack, it turned into dust. He hurriedly concentrated on analyzing the text. Without a doubt, this was a cultivation technique. However, he was confused because this was completely different from a normal cultivation technique. It seemed to be a fragmented and incomplete cultivation technique. What the hell, a fragment of a cultivation technique is worth keeping so carefully. Moreover, this cultivation technique was placed together with the Inferno Divine Palm. I originally thought it was a martial arts manual, but I didn't expect it to be a cultivation technique. Tang Zheng really couldn't figure out the reason, but he still read on word by word, hoping to comprehend the profound meaning within. Unknowingly, his true qi began to move. With a clang, a table in the distance flew toward him and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Ah! He couldn't help but cry out in surprise. He hurriedly raised his hand, and a black hole appeared in his palm. Wasn't this the scene when he used the sky-swallowing technique? How could this fragment trigger a reaction from the sky-swallowing technique? He flipped through the remaining pages word by word, and the incantation of the sky-swallowing technique slowly emerged in his mind. Suddenly, his eyes widened, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. Why does it have so many similarities with the heaven-swallowing technique? This discovery made him extremely surprised. When he carefully compared the two cultivation techniques, he actually found that after the sky-swallowing technique ended, he could smoothly transition to the incomplete cultivation technique. Could it be that the original sky-devouring technique was not complete, and this fragment is only the second half of the sky-devouring technique? Only when the two are combined together can it be the complete sky-devouring technique? He was completely shocked. Ever since he started practicing the sky-swallowing technique, he had only practiced it for fun because it was a technique of the demon race. He hadn't really put his heart and soul into it, so the power of the sky-swallowing technique had always been barely satisfactory. He originally thought that this was because the sky-swallowing technique only had this much power, and that the description of swallowing the heavens and the earth was just an exaggeration to scare people. Now it seemed that he had underestimated the power of the sky-swallowing technique. Or rather, the demon race's sky-swallowing technique was originally incomplete, and the most important part of the second half of the technique was actually shelved in the Langya Pavilion. Even the dragon race would not be stingy to take a second look at the fragment placed on the first floor of the Langya Pavilion. This was because the first floor of the Langya Pavilion was filled with martial arts techniques. The dragon race would definitely disdain cultivating martial arts techniques, and would instead cultivate more advanced cultivation techniques. The secret manuals on the first floor of the Langya Pavilion had always been shelved, and even the mysterious fragment of the sky-swallowing technique was hidden there. However, there was one thing that puzzled him. The cultivation techniques collected in the Langya Pavilion were all righteous cultivation techniques. They were dignified and magnificent, so how could there be a demon race cultivation technique? I'm afraid I can only go back and ask the five-clawed golden dragon. Tang Zheng shook his head. When he connected the first and second parts of the sky-swallowing technique together, he made a new discovery. It turned out that the sky-swallowing technique was also divided into cultivation levels. They were, in order, devouring objects, absorbing skills, devouring souls, moving mountains, moving seas, and sky-swallowing. There were a total of 6 cultivation levels. Tang Zheng realized that he had only cultivated to the first level of devouring objects. No wonder he could not sense its powerful power. If he cultivated to the 6th level of the sky-swallowing technique, then devouring the heavens and the earth would not be an exaggeration. He could really do it. He smacked his lips as he was stunned by this discovery. No wonder the demon race is so powerful. With such a heaven-defying cultivation technique, it's impossible for them not to be powerful. However, the sky-swallowing technique is not complete among the demon race, so they can't cultivate to this level. Without the second half of the technique, the cultivator will always be ignorant and will stop at the devouring objects level for life. Now that I have the complete cultivation technique, I can't give up on the sky-swallowing technique. Unlike other demon race cultivation techniques, I don't need to sacrifice other people's lives to increase my power during cultivation. It won't go against the heavens and the earth. Since I've cultivated to the sky-swallowing technique, I'll see if I can break through and reach the second level of the sky-swallowing technique. He delightfully began to research and explore, but was immediately shocked by the introduction of the absorption technique. This was because, if one cultivated to this level, they could absorb the power of others. Furthermore, the higher their cultivation, the more power they could absorb from others. There was no need to cultivate at all. Just by absorbing other people's power, his cultivation could increase rapidly. He could not help but recall the scene when the first Emperor Qin absorbed the dragon qi in his body. There was a huge difference between the two. The first Emperor Qin absorbed the dragon qi, but he did not absorb power. Once the sky-swallowing technique absorbed the other party's power, the other party's cultivation would decrease greatly. If it continued to absorb, the other party would be beaten back to their original state, and their decades of cultivation would be wasted. If the other party's strength decreased and the other party's strength increased, there would be a huge gap. It was simply heaven-defying. Tang Zheng was excited. Did he not need this cultivation technique now? There were so many enemies. If he could absorb their power without killing them, would it not be the best of both worlds? Yangming suppressed the excitement in his heart and calmed down to focus on cultivating. He had already memorized the sky-swallowing technique by heart. In the past, he did not have many breakthroughs in his cultivation, but after comprehending the second half, he felt enlightened. Somehow, a special feeling welled up in his heart. He reached out his palm, and a black hole appeared on it. A mysterious aura spiraled around the hole. All of a sudden, the black hole shrunk bit by bit. Tang Zheng frowned and gritted his teeth. It was obvious that he had reached a critical moment. Without warning, he shouted. The black hole quickly shrunk and disappeared, but the mysterious aura still lingered on his palm and could not be removed. Oh, Yangming opened his eyes and looked at his palm. He smiled and said, I didn't expect to succeed so smoothly. I've finally cultivated the second level of the sky swallowing technique. But it's a pity that I can only perform the sky swallowing technique once a day now. It turned out that when he broke through, he had a slight understanding. The sky swallowing technique was powerful, but it was not omnipotent. Given Tang Zheng's current strength, he could only perform it once a day. However, as his cultivation increased, the number of times he could use it would increase. Although there were many restrictions, Tang Zheng was not depressed. Instead, he was very happy. The restrictions showed the brilliance of the sky swallowing technique. If there were no restrictions, there would definitely be people who did not work hard to cultivate every day. Instead, they would place all their hopes on absorbing other people's powers. Although it was very tempting, the powers absorbed were from external sources after all. They were not accumulated and cultivated bit by bit. The two were completely different. In the beginning, cultivators would definitely taste the sweetness and their powers would soar. However, if they relied too much on it and neglected the essentials, their cultivation would become more difficult and stagnate. This was because the powers in their bodies were all absorbed, and the dregs and essences were all absorbed. On the other hand, their real powers were suppressed bit by bit, and in the end, they did not have a foothold. This was also the reason why even if there were people who could quickly help people increase their cultivation, they would not increase it too much. The further a cultivator wanted to go, the more they would need to increase their cultivation through their own hard work. This was a long-term plan. Tang Zheng was not blinded. Instead, he was very clear-headed. However, he was still looking forward to it. He did not know what it would be like to absorb other people's powers. His powers had already recovered to their peak. He walked out and found that the two women were sitting in the living room. The atmosphere was much more harmonious than before. It seemed that through talking, the unfamiliarity and estrangement between the two had disappeared. Tang Zheng let out a sigh of relief. It was fortunate that these two women did not fight. Although his impression of Anne was much better, he did not really have any improper thoughts about her. Especially in front of his girlfriend, he could not show the slightest interest in Anne. Although Anne was indeed very attractive. Ah, are you okay? The two women stood up at the same time and asked in unison. I'm fine. Thank you for your help, Princess Anne. Anne smiled sweetly. Why are we still so distant? What are you going to do next? Although Tang Zheng had recovered his powers and even had a breakthrough in the sky swallowing technique, he was not arrogant enough to confront the ancestor directly. This powerful opponent could only be dealt with in the future. I wonder if Princess Anne has a way to send us out of the Atlantic Empire? Tang Zheng asked. And nodded confidently. Of course there is a way. You must be eager to leave, so let's go now. Tang Zheng agreed. He was very grateful for Anne's understanding. Men. Anne called. The door was pushed open, and a person walked in respectfully. What orders does the princess have? Prepare the plane. We will leave immediately. Yes. After a while, he came back to report that everything was ready. Chapter 769. A luxurious private jet soared into the sky. Tang Zheng and the others finally breathed a sigh of relief. They couldn't help but recall what they had seen and heard on the way. The police sealed off the road and carried out a strict search of the passing cars. If they weren't in the embassy's car, they might not have been spared. At this critical moment, Princess Anne's name was still very frightening. Ordinary people didn't dare to act rashly. This time, they were able to leave safely because of Princess Anne. Tang Zheng nodded at her and thanked her sincerely. Anne smiled mysteriously and said, since you're on my plane, you have to listen to my arrangements. Tang Zheng smiled faintly, of course. When can we reach Huaxia? We won't go back to Huaxia for the time being. Let's go to my country. Your country? That's right. My father and mother want to meet you. They sincerely invite you to visit my country. I hope you can do them the honor. Annie's smile disappeared as she said in a serious tone. This was out of Tang Zheng's expectations. He didn't expect her parents to invite him. However, the other party's daughter had helped him so much. If he directly refused, it would be unreasonable. Okay, it would be impolite to refuse. Tang Zhen promised. Fang Shishi's eyes flashed with a trace of sadness. Unspecified currency. Princess Anne's eyes lit up with excitement. That's great. The plane landed at the Swedish Royal Airport. A team of armed guards was waiting for them. They escorted their motorcade into a magnificent palace. Looking from the window, this was a typical Gothic building. It had a historical charm, but it wasn't majestic. Of course, it definitely didn't have the aura of a nouveau riche. It was upright and very grand. Ding Liang had already been escorted to Huaxia by the guards. Tang Zheng and Fang Shishi became the guests of the royal family. As soon as they got out of the car, Fang Shishi held Tang Zheng's hand and didn't want to let go. It was as if she was declaring her sovereignty. Princess Anne glanced at it and dismissed it with a smile. Tang Zheng could sense the uneasiness in Shishi's heart. He smiled at her and held her hand tightly. Seeing his smile, Fang Shishi let out a sigh of relief in her heart. Looking at the magnificent palace, she took a deep breath and encouraged herself. She could not be frightened by the other party's formation. In the majestic palace, two people sat in a condescending manner. The man had an extraordinary bearing, while the woman was graceful and noble. Tang Zheng glanced at them and concluded that they were Anne's parents, the king and queen. The king and queen were also observing Tang Zheng. He was born with delicate features. His Asian face was completely different from the Westerners. It was refreshing. He had an imposing appearance, neither servile nor overbearing, and had an extraordinary temperament. But when they saw Tang Zheng and Fang Shishi tightly holding hands, a trace of fluctuation appeared in their eyes at the same time. What was going on? Could this girl be her younger sister? But wasn't he an orphan? He didn't have a younger sister. Although the two of them had complicated feelings, they did not show the slightest difference. This was the etiquette and bearing that a king and queen should have. The king stood up first and said in a kind and gentle tone, "Welcome our distinguished guest from afar, Mr. Tang Zheng." Tang Zheng nodded reservedly, "Thank you for your help, Your Majesty." This time, Anne was able to mobilize so many resources to help him. It was definitely not just her own actions and will. She must have received the king's approval. The king nodded and smiled, "Mr. Tang Zheng has helped my daughter many times. Your Huaxia values the kindness of a drop of water and a spring of water to be repaid. This is what I should do." The king was refined and courteous, and did not give off an overbearing and aloof feeling, which gave Tang Zheng a good impression of him. "Mr. Tang Zheng, why don't you introduce us to this beautiful young lady next to you?" "She is my girlfriend, Fang Shishi." Tang Zheng directly introduced her. The corner of Fang Shishi's mouth revealed a satisfied smile. The king and queen looked at each other, and their expressions finally changed a little. They looked at Anne at the same time. What was going on? How did he have a girlfriend? Anne's expression did not change, and there was a faint smile on her face. Although the king and queen had many questions in their hearts, they could not ask in person. That would be too rude and incompatible with the style of the royal family. The atmosphere was slightly awkward. The king immediately restrained his expression, laughed dryly, and praised insincerely, "Your girlfriend is so beautiful." After a pause, he quickly changed the topic, "Please move to the dining hall. Let's have lunch together first." After that, the king and queen walked down the stairs. The royal butler, Bruce, quickly came up to them. Bruce gave Tang Zheng a deep look and slightly nodded his head. The two were familiar with each other, so Tang Zheng also nodded his head in response. "Honorable guests, please." Bruce invited. Tang Zheng held Fang Shishi's hand and walked side by side with the king and queen to the dining hall. There were many attendants standing on both sides, looking at them politely. And was pulled aside by the queen and whispered to in a low voice. The king had a gentle and dignified smile on his face the whole time. The group came to the dining hall, which was very bright. The sunlight outside the window shone in, perfectly setting off the elegant style of the dining hall. A group of attendants was busy in front of a long dining table. When the king and the others arrived, they were just ready and took a few steps back in unison. Exquisite dishes were already placed on the table. They were like works of art, exuding boundless beauty. Tang Zheng was calm. After the king invited him, he took the initiative to sit down. The attendants considerately pulled out chairs for them. The king tapped the exquisite wine glass with a spoon, raised the glass, and said, "Today is to welcome the honorable guests from afar. Let us drink together and welcome the guests." The queen and princess raised their glasses. Tang Zheng and Fang Shishi looked at each other and also raised their glasses. They took a sip. The king said, "Honorable guests, please taste our delicious food." When the meal began, Tang Zheng buried himself in the delicacies. He had to admit that the Western food of the royal family was much better than the Western restaurants outside. Although he didn't eat Western food often, he could tell the difference between good and bad. Fang Shishi, on the other hand, found the food tasteless and ate in silence. Tang Zheng didn't know the rules of the royal family, so he simply treated it as if it was his own home. He ate the dishes politely and didn't make a fool of himself. The royal family lived up to the saying of, "Don't talk when eating and don't talk when sleeping." They finished the meal in silence. Although the atmosphere was a little strange, both sides tacitly didn't point it out. The queen warmly invited Fang Shishi to visit the palace, and Tang Zheng was invited to the king's study. Looking at the large books in the study, which was comparable to a library, Tang Zheng deeply felt what it meant to have a heritage. This was definitely not like some nouveau riche who purely used the study as a way to show off. Those books were simply put on the shelf and would never be flipped through in their lifetime. The books in this library-like study were definitely frequently flipped through. This was the heritage that distinguished the nouveau riche. Bruce made the tea and politely left the study. The two sat quietly in front of the window and looked at the beautiful scenery outside. The king spoke first. "Mr. Tang Zheng, I've heard a lot of rumors about you. Your identity is very special. Not only are you a mysterious practitioner, but you are also a consultant of the Huaxia Security Bureau. You also have your own company and are famous in Yenqing University. I really can't imagine how you can do all this at your age. So, I sincerely admire you." The king's straightforward praise made Tang Zheng a little embarrassed. He smiled and said, "Your Majesty, you flatter me." The king shook his head. "It's not flattering, but it's not enough to describe your excellence. This time, you directly collided with the Rockefeller family. This is no different from Mars colliding with Earth. It's really dazzling and amazing." Hearing the king mention the Rockefeller family, Tang Zheng shivered. He knew the business was coming. The king's invitation was definitely not as simple as it seemed on the surface. It was just to thank him for helping Princess Anne. Every word and action of the royal family had a deep meaning. I heard Princess Anne mention some of the past history of the Rockefeller family and European countries. It was really unexpected and left a deep impression. Tang Zheng simply continued the topic and simply said. The king's face showed grief. He sighed and said, "You don't know how big of a threat the Rockefeller family is to us. They really make people hate them to the bone." With the king's personality, saying such ruthless words was definitely not a lie. He probably really hated the Rockefeller family to the bone. Tang Zheng said sadly, "It's understandable. But why can't so many European countries join forces to fight against the Rockefeller family?" Back then, the European countries' national strength was the best in the world. Assassination. The Rockefeller family took advantage of their unique advantages and launched assassinations on the royal families of the European countries. Many of the royal families of the countries were killed by them. Of course, they also killed many of their own people. The killing continued for a century, and the Atlantic Empire took advantage of the situation to rise. In the end, both sides reached a compromise and temporarily maintained peace. However, the rise of the Atlantic Empire was irreversible, and the fall of the European countries could not be stopped. Because of this, the current situation was formed. Even now, many European countries still shamelessly follow the Atlantic Empire, forgetting their past. It is really lamentable. The king was panting with anger. Perhaps the resentment accumulated in his heart, which he had no way to vent, now seemed to have opened a gate and poured out. Tang Zheng looked at the king with a burning gaze and said, "Then you really want the Rockefeller family to completely disappear from this world?" Of course, it's not just me. There are many others who have the same idea. It's just that no one dared to go against the Rockefeller family. Now, a hero has appeared. The king looked at Tang Zheng with bright and piercing eyes. "You want me to completely defeat the Rockefeller family?" The king nodded, "Of course. That way, you will be the hero of Europe, an eternal hero with supreme influence. More influence than you used to have." In the past, he only relied on Princess Anne's mysterious knight to have a little influence, but in the eyes of the nobles, he still did not have much of a presence. Chapter 770. Seeing that Tang Zheng was silent, the king continued to add, "Since you have such a strong influence in Europe, no one will dare to touch you. I heard that many people in Huaxia are also hostile to you." Tang Zheng's eyelids twitched. The other party's preparation was indeed sufficient. He even thought of this point. Tang Zheng did not hesitate to leave behind Mount Wujuan and the witch tribe. One of the biggest uses was to restrain the officials and make them wary. He, Tang Zheng, was not alone. He had a large group of brothers under him. In ancient times, it was often a taboo to have an army for oneself. However, if one had enough soldiers, it was not a taboo, but a deterrent and protective talisman. Moreover, your company will be unimpeded in Europe. This is a very large market. The king continued to throw out the bait. Seeing that Tang Zheng was unmoved, the king could not help but feel anxious. Could it be that his weight was not heavy enough? His mind spun rapidly. Although he was calm and collected, talking cheerfully and wittily, he was actually very anxious in his heart. He had been looking forward to the appearance of a hero like Tang Zheng for a long time. Now that the hero was in front of him, how could he just let him go? As the saying goes, a soldier who does not want to be a general is not a good soldier. He was not a good soldier, but he was a good king. He wanted to improve his country's influence and status in Europe and even the world. His territory was not large, but his ambition was not small. If he could achieve this, then he would leave his name in history. As a king, perhaps this was the only thing that was attractive enough. The king gritted his teeth and said, "I have heard of the rumors about you and Anne. Anne is the most famous princess in Europe. Many people admire her. I think you are the same. If you agree, I will not pursue the matter between you and your girlfriend. I know that Huaxia has many traditions, including polygamy. I respect your customs." Tang Zheng smacked his lips and almost bit his tongue off. He had really put in a lot of effort to make such a tempting offer. If it was someone else, they would definitely agree without hesitation. Being able to marry the princess of a country was something that many people dreamed of. It was simply like smoke rising from one's ancestral grave. However, Tang Zheng did not have any improper thoughts about Princess Anne. Although Princess Anne was beautiful, there was always a distance between them. When it came to liking someone, appearance was only one of the reasons, but it wasn't the deciding factor. The National Security Agency had endured the pain of using his daughter as a bargaining chip. It could be seen how desperate his thoughts were. Tang Zheng felt a little sad. In ancient times, princesses were often married off to seek peace. Although hundreds and thousands of years had passed, some things had not changed, even in the West, which had always boasted of freedom and democracy. Tang Zheng was not angry. He just felt that under Princess Anne's glamorous appearance, there was actually a lot of unhappiness and bitterness. She was not much different from an ordinary person. At this point, the halo above Princess Anne's head gradually dissipated in Tang Zheng's eyes. He couldn't help but feel that Princess Anne was also amiable. That sense of distance had disappeared without a trace. Tang Zheng knew that Princess Anne had always wanted to improve their relationship, but he had always turned a blind eye. Now, he couldn't help but feel pity for her. In the future, he would treat her better and at least treat her as a friend. The king stared at Tang Zheng. He thought to himself, I've already lowered myself so much. Are you still not satisfied? He almost couldn't help but blurt out and directly ask Tang Zheng to state the conditions. Tang Zheng finally opened his mouth. He said neither too fast nor too slow, Your Majesty, I don't have any improper thoughts about Anne, but I will also agree to this matter. The king was overjoyed, but in his heart, he secretly thought that he must be too embarrassed to admit it. This kind of thing should be understood tacitly. It was indeed too impulsive to say it directly. He nodded towards Tang Zheng with a smile that said, I know what you're thinking. He stretched out his hand and said, Then I wish us a happy cooperation. A happy cooperation. Tang Zheng gently shook his hand. But this matter is too dangerous. I can't just take the risk and you guys can just sit back and reap the benefits. You guys should at least contribute a little, right? Of course, I have secretly contacted the kings of several countries. They have secretly come to Sweden. I will introduce them to you and discuss the specific details. Tang Zheng said that he was well prepared. He had actually contacted other countries as if he was sure that he would agree. Tang Zheng did not refuse. Next, it was time to negotiate the conditions. He would fight for enough etiquette for himself. The king seemed to be a person who firmly believed in striking while the iron was hot, so he arranged a meeting that night. Although the people in front of him were the rulers of a country that many people admired, in Tang Zheng's eyes, they had already shed their halo and become ordinary people, business partners, negotiation targets. Thus, he did not show any mercy and argued with them. In the end, he won a lot of benefits. In the future, when he truly attacked the Rockefeller family, these countries would have to support him. This support was not in the form of military strength, but in the form of economic support. They would fiercely attack the Rockefeller family's industries and seize the Rockefeller family's benefits. Naturally, these benefits would belong to Tang Zheng, and these countries would not be able to touch them. Although it was a little painful, when they thought about how their national strength would rapidly rise without the suppression of the Rockefeller family in the future, this sacrifice was worth it. At the same time, these countries would also attack the Atlantic Empire in the financial market. The most painful thing for a country was the virtual financial market. It would cause a shock in various industries and even shake the foundation of the country. According to the plan, Tang Zheng's company would send people to open up business in Europe to prepare to take over the Rockefeller family's industries in the future. This spoil of war would be huge. It should be known that the Rockefeller family had been in business for hundreds of years, involved in various industries, and was the leader in many of them. Once he took over these, Tang Zheng's industries would rapidly rise. Although it would not reach the current state of the Rockefeller family, in time, it would definitely surpass them. At that time, it would be difficult to resist even if the several major families in Huaxia were to join forces. His business empire would truly take shape. Fang Shishir was obviously not as good as Tang Zheng. Although the queen and princess Anne were very friendly on the surface, the queen still had some hostility towards her. Fang Shishir, who was sensitive, was smart enough to feel it, but she could not do anything about it. She could only force a smile. In the dead of night, Tang Zheng and Fang Shishir were arranged in two separate rooms. Obviously, they were not in the same room as Tang Zheng wanted. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, and he did not have the opportunity to talk to Fang Shishir. However, They obviously did not expect Tang Zheng to be so daring. He actually climbed over the wall, climbed through the window, and sneaked into Fang Shishi's room. When Fang Shishi saw the person who climbed in through the window, she almost made a move. However, after seeing the person's face clearly, she was shocked and opened her mouth wide. "You? How did you climb in?" Tang Zheng laughed. "I missed you." The two had not seen each other for several months. The process of their previous meeting could not be said to be wonderful. They had narrowly escaped death. Now that they were finally free, the strong feelings could not help but hit their hearts. Tang Zheng did not care about the rules. No rules could stop him from seeing Fang Shishi and complaining about the pain of lovesickness. He could not help but criticize His Majesty. Knowing that Fang Shishi was his girlfriend, he still insisted on arranging 2 rooms for them. This was blatantly destroying his happiness. After hearing this, Fang Shishi's words of reproach immediately disappeared. Only tenderness was left. She hugged him and said coquettishly, "I missed you too." As the saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. The two of them were originally passionate young men and women. When dry wood met a raging fire, it was easy to ignite. In a short while, the room was filled with sounds that made one blush. Fortunately, the room was soundproof, so there was no need to worry about the walls having ears. Because of this, the two of them were very immersed. They even unlocked many new moves, making the two of them feel as if their bodies and minds were floating on top of the clouds. Huff, huff. The two heavily gasped for breath before Tang Zheng flipped over and laid down flat on the ground. Fang Shishi was lying on his chest, her full breasts pressing against his chest, causing ripples in one's heart. He once again began to feel restless. Fang Shishi glanced at his lower body. Her face was as red as blood. She pretended to slap him and said, "Beat this dishonest guy." "Hey, what if you break it?" Tang Zheng hurriedly stopped her. "It's best if you break it. Then you won't attract bees and butterflies," Fang Shishi said coquettishly. Tang Zheng laughed. "If you break it, I won't be able to serve you. How can you bear to do that?" "It would be strange if I didn't." Tang Zheng grabbed her hand and held her in his arms. "Don't move. Otherwise, you will really suffer. Be honest." Fang Shishi didn't dare to move again. She was deeply afraid that he would become lively again. She said sourly, "Princess An has a special liking for you." Tang Zheng righteously said, "I don't have any thoughts about it." I'm not afraid of thieves stealing, but I'm afraid of thieves remembering. Moreover, there are so many close female friends in the country." Hearing this, Tang Zheng couldn't help but think of Yi Dingdang. He said, "Ding Dang has left." Fang Shishi knew very well about the matter between Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang. Back then, Yi Dingdang's parents tried their best to matchmake the two of them, but in the end, she still won the first prize. She was happy for a long time. Later, she also chose to turn a blind eye to the ambiguous relationship between Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang. This was her philosophy. She wasn't as tough as Yi Dingdang. Her personality was more of a delicate woman's mentality. She liked Tang Zheng, and Tang Zheng also liked her. He even risked his life to save her. In this world, how many men could do this? She felt that this was her luck. Why should she ask for so much? This year of studying and living independently made her think through many things. Love wasn't just about possessing, but more about giving. Tang Zheng gave so much, but how much did she give? Therefore, even though she knew about Tang Zheng's romantic past, she still didn't leave him. Especially after experiencing this matter, she knew that she couldn't leave him in this lifetime. Chapter 771. Fang Shishi sensed Tang Zheng's gloomy mood. She gently stroked his chest and said emotionally, "I will never leave you." Tang Zheng's emotions fluctuated as he hugged her even tighter. He wanted nothing more than to rub her into his body. He promised, "I will never leave you either." I will always protect you. Fang Shishir gazed deeply into his eyes and nodded. I believe you. Warm as spring, silky and delicate feelings lingered in each other's hearts. After a long time, they slightly calmed down. Tang Jing asked, Shishir, you wore the golden jade purple robe, but those people still caught you and even hurt you. It seems that a mere defensive transcendent artifact is not enough to protect you. Fang Shishir's expression darkened. This was a cruel reality. She forced a smile and said, transcendent artifacts are hard to find in this world. This is something that can't be helped. That may not be so. Tang Jing smiled mysteriously. A rainbow light suddenly appeared in the center of his palm. This rainbow light floated up and illuminated the entire room. Wow! Fang Shishir opened her mouth wide. She had never seen such a brilliant scene in her life. It was like a rainbow, but more beautiful and mysterious than a rainbow. A ribbon floated in the air, giving her the urge to grab it. This rainbow ribbon is for you. For really? Fang Shishir could not believe it. She could clearly feel the powerful energy contained in it. This was a rare high-grade transcendent artifact. This is a heaven-grade transcendent artifact. It is as if it was specially made for you. I specially prepared this gift for you. This was one of the 3 transcendent artifacts that Tang Jing took out from the 3rd floor of the Langya Pavilion. They were the clear wind sword, the sacred armor shield, and the rainbow ribbon. The clear wind sword had already been gifted to Yi Dingdang. The clear wind sword was very compatible with the wind-chasing swordsmanship. The sacred armor shield was an oracle bone, a heaven-grade defensive transcendent artifact. Tang Jing kept it for his own use. However, he had no use for it at the moment. When he was fighting with Qin Shi Huang in the mausoleum, Qin Shi Huang's strength was too strong, and he couldn't resist at all. The holy armor shield couldn't change the situation. In Rockefeller's castle, he had successfully escaped without using the holy armor shield. Therefore, this heaven-grade defensive magic treasure was still in the idle stage. However, the rainbow ribbon finally welcomed its new owner. Fang Shishir was overjoyed. She kissed Tang Jing and said sweetly, You're too good to me. Let's bind it with blood first. Fang Shishir channeled her energy and forced out a drop of essence blood from her finger. It fell on the 7-colored silk. The 7-colored silk shone brightly, making it hard for people to open their eyes. Collect! Fang Shishir shouted, and the 7-colored light instantly converged. The 7-colored silk wrapped around her waist, and with a flash of light, it turned into a beautiful belt. Wow, that's great! Fang Shishir was so excited that she danced with joy. Tang Jing also smiled. Seeing her so happy made him happier than if he had obtained a heaven-grade magic treasure. Making his woman happy was the duty of any true man. In Princess Anne's bedroom, 2 people were lying on the soft bed. Anne and the Queen, the mother and daughter pair, were confiding in each other. And, you never told me that Tang Jing has a girlfriend? The Queen asked with a straight face. And slyly blinked and said, You didn't ask me either. The Queen was angry, but with her magnanimous nature, she couldn't scold her. She could only earnestly say, You are the princess. Could it be that you have to tolerate him having other women? And shrugged and said, Is there a lack of dirty things in the royal family of each country? How many people secretly have lovers? Mother, you should know, right? The Queen was speechless. In any country, the most chaotic was the royal family. Don't look at the dignified appearance, but the dirty things in the dark were hard to imagine. The Queen had been influenced by what she saw and heard over the years. But this is too much for you. The Queen said with heartache. Actually, I don't know if I like him or not. At most, I have a good impression of him. Anne's eyes were filled with a complicated expression as she said faintly. If you don't like him, then stop in time. The Queen was overjoyed. But I like to stay with him. It's especially exciting and never monotonous. Moreover, it gives me a sense of security. Princess Anne's eyes were filled with little stars. Huff, huff. The queen gasped for breath. She was obviously angry and said, "You are wrong, do you know that?" And shrugged and said, "Is that so? Who knows how many mistakes a person makes in their life? You have taught me since I was young to be cautious and avoid making mistakes. But I really want to make a mistake once and see how it feels." The queen looked as if she didn't recognize her daughter. She stared straight at her and said, "You will regret it." "That's not necessarily true." Anne's eyes were firm. The next day, Tang Zheng walked out of his room and smiled at Fang Shishir, who opened the door next door. Fang Shishir's face was red as she glared at him. "You're up." And the queen happened to walk in and saw the two exchanging glances. And pretended not to see, but the queen looked at Fang Shishir. Her face was flushed and her skin was smooth and delicate. It was very different from yesterday. As someone who had experienced it before, the queen could tell at a glance that Fang Shishir was nourished and the result of a balance of yin and yang. The two of them clearly slept in separate rooms. Could it be that they secretly slept together last night? Ridiculous, ridiculous. How could such a thing happen in the Swedish palace right under their noses? The queen's breathing couldn't help but quicken a bit, but she was very restrained and didn't flip out. Instead, she gave Tang Zheng a deep look. Without a doubt, this kind of lustful matter was definitely his doing. "I'll take you out for a tour today." And warmly invited. Since the business was done, Tang Zheng didn't intend to stay any longer. After all, there were still many things to do in the country. He couldn't contact Tian Chanzi and didn't know what happened in the east that made him so uneasy. "Thank you for your kindness, but I'm preparing to return to my country." Tang Zheng tactfully refused. "Return to your country?" The queen was very surprised, especially when Tang Zheng refused her daughter's kindness. This made her quite unhappy. There was no man in the world who had the heart to refuse Anne. Without a doubt, Tang Zheng was the first. The queen was about to sternly refute, but Anne beat her to it. "Okay, school is busy, and I have to go back quickly. I can't stay any longer. Mother, we'll leave later. I'll miss you." And gave the queen a big hug. The queen's anger was suppressed in her chest, and she had nowhere to vent it. As an elegant queen, she wouldn't reprimand the man her daughter liked in front of her daughter, even if the man made her very unhappy. This was her basic quality. Thousands of words turned into one sentence. "Mother will miss you even more." After breakfast, Tang Zheng was called by the king to the study for a long time. This time, the focus was on the master-disciple relationship between Anne and Tian Chanzi. Obviously, the king already knew about this strange master-disciple relationship, but he was happy to see it. He had learned from many channels that Tian Chanzi was a very powerful cultivator. His daughter had become a cultivator, so in the future, the royal family could also become cultivators. Why could the Rockefeller family run rampant and no one dared to provoke them? That was because of their unique physique and strong strength. He was stronger than other families and even the European royal family, so he could be so arrogant and suppress them fiercely. The European royal family had never found a way to enhance their own strength. Hua Xia's martial arts were, of course, powerful, but in fact, she kept it to herself and didn't teach it to outsiders. Not to mention these foreigners, even if they tried their best to learn, they only learned a little. But now it was different. A new broad road was in front of the king. He had heard of Tang Zheng's strength, and he was a real master. If his daughter practiced it, then in the future, she could also teach the skills of cultivation to the royal family. The royal family was powerful and could be superior to other countries. Once the Rockefeller family fell, the Swedish royal family could quickly rise and suppress the other heroes. Just imagining that scene made the king extremely excited. Therefore, before leaving, he specially asked Tang Zheng to take care of Anne, and also prepared a big gift for him and Tian Chanzi, 2 special gift boxes made of unknown materials. Tang Zheng knew that the Western people were used to opening gift boxes in front of the host. He was also very curious about what kind of gift the king of a country would give. With his identity, he shouldn't be able to take out ordinary things. Eating and taking was Tang Zheng's favorite thing to do. He solemnly opened the box, and inside the two boxes laid a fist-sized shiny object that looked like a crystal. "What are these?" Tang Zheng asked, puzzled. Were they just two big crystals? That was a bit too shabby. Crystals weren't worth much. As if he could see his disappointment, the king hurriedly introduced as if he was presenting a treasure. These two crystals were found in a meteorite impact 100 years ago. According to our investigation, they contain a powerful energy, but we have no way to extract it. I thought that since you practitioners are so powerful, giving pearls to heroes, maybe you have a way. Crystals? Tang Zheng was full of doubts. There were too many uncertainties in the things found in meteorites. Maybe it was a waste stone that was useless on other planets, or it could contain treasures, elements that didn't exist on Earth. By examining and processing this kind of meteorite, many things could be made, such as weapons. Many famous knives and swords in ancient times were made of meteorite iron contained in meteorites. They could cut iron like mud and cut hair. They were the favorite of swordsmen. Was there energy in it? Tang Zheng was skeptical, but he casually grabbed a crystal. Whoosh! Tang Zheng's breathing quickened involuntarily. He opened his eyes wide and looked at the crystal in his palm in disbelief. His genuine qi was running on its own. A stream of energy was transferred from the crystal to his palm and flowed to his 8 extraordinary meridians. This energy was very pure, without a trace of impurities. It was even purer than the spirit stones he used before. Although it was only a small piece, the energy contained in it was immeasurable. How could ordinary pearls and gems compare to this? This was a priceless treasure. Chapter 772. Crystal stones were a higher-level existence than spirit stones. It was a cultivation treasure that cultivators yearned for even in their dreams. However, there were very few of them in the world, and they could only be found in some meteorites. Although Tang Zheng did not know this point, he could already confirm that crystal stones were very important to his future cultivation. He happily put away the gift box and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty." Looking at Tang Zheng's reaction, the king knew that this gift was the right one. He secretly thought that the remaining crystal stones would definitely be of great use to and in the future. Then I will leave and in your care in the future. Send my regards to Tian Chanzi. The king said with a smile. Tang Zheng, Fang Shishir, and Annie took a private jet to leave Sweden and return home. They landed at the Beijing International Airport, and without the entourage of attendants, they returned to the city in a light car. And looked at Tang Zheng and asked, "Tang Zheng, you must have found a new place to live, right?" Tang Zheng was speechless. A woman's mind was very meticulous. Seeing that he had not returned to his original home for a long time, she actually guessed this point. He could not deny it and could only nod his head. "Then can I go and take a look?" And looked at him with her big sparkling eyes. He could not refuse and could only nod his head. She when they arrived at the villa, and covered her mouth and exclaimed, "Wow, so you are living in such a luxurious place. No wonder you did not return to your previous home." Tang Zheng was speechless and rolled his eyes. Compared to her family's palace, this was a world of difference. Just as they entered the house, Nana flew down from upstairs. She jumped into Tang Zheng's arms and happily shouted, "Brother, you are finally back." Tang Zheng patted her back and said, "Yes, I missed Nana, so I came back." "I miss you too." Nana pouted and looked at her with her big black eyes. Empyrean Fairy and Marshall also walked down the stairs. Empyrean Fairy glanced at Tang Zheng indifferently, and then focused all of her attention on Nana. The other two beauties did not attract her attention at all. When Wu saw Tang Zheng, she was a little excited, but when she saw Fang Shishir, her expression became a little awkward. Fang Shishir recognized Marshall, so he was not surprised, but towards the Empyrean Fairy, he could not help but take a few more glances. Although the Empyrean fairy had deliberately concealed her charm, she was still extremely beautiful. Anne was dumbfounded. She exclaimed, "Wow, Huaxia has an idiom, a golden house hides a mistress." Yes, this is what it means to keep a mistress in a golden house. Tang Zheng almost spat out a mouthful of blood. How can you fan the flames like this? Do you think it's not chaotic enough? Fang Shishi's expression remained the same, as if he did not hear those words. Tang Zheng hurriedly introduced both parties, changing the topic. They all live here, and the rooms are also like this. I also want to choose one. I don't want to go back and live in that empty house alone. And was not polite at all. She directly said and ran upstairs to choose a room. Tang Zheng had no choice but to give up. Sure, go and choose a room. Tang Zheng said. I'll take her. Marshall took the initiative to say. Fang Shi smiled faintly at her and thanked her before the two of them went upstairs. As for the Empyrean fairy, she directly sat on the sofa and said without batting an eyelid, something seems to have happened in the east. Tang Zheng was stunned and asked, you know about it too? I have a feeling, but I am still unable to determine what it is. Empyrean fairy had been wholeheartedly teaching her disciple Nana during this period of time. She was not distracted at all and the matters of the outside world could not disturb her. Tang Zheng was puzzled. Not only did Tian Chanzi have feelings for him, but even Empyrean fairy was no exception. This was not an illusion, but something big had happened. But what could it be? Tian Chanzi could not be contacted, so he had no way of knowing. His heart felt like it was being pressed down by a stone. He felt uneasy and decided to give Su Yingtian a call to see if he had any information. Su Yingtian's voice was somewhat tired. After returning from Heaven Mountain, he had arrested so many terrorists. During this period of time, he had been so busy that his feet did not touch the ground. Of course, these achievements had greatly increased the chief's impression of him. The negative impression of him had gradually been made up. When he heard Tang Zheng's voice, his tone returned to normal. He said, "Congratulations on successfully rescuing Miss Fang." Tang Zheng hurriedly thanked him. If he had not ordered Ding Liang to fully cooperate with him, he would not have been able to achieve such a victory. Last time, I said that something big had happened in the east. Do you have any news? I was just about to contact you. I just received the news not long ago. Something happened in the island nation. Many people died, and there was a strange phenomenon in the sky. This matter was kept secret very well. The people did not know at all. I also paid a huge price to obtain this information. Tang Zheng was silent. The deaths of many people and the strange phenomenon in the sky made his heart thump. His mood sank to the bottom. Wouldn't this be the case when the Mountain River Blood Sacrifice Array was activated? Could it be that someone had activated the Mountain River Blood Sacrifice Array in the island nation? If that was the case, this person had to be the Hundred Faces Star Lord. Tang Zheng had always been wary of the Hundred Faces Star Lord activating this array in the country. He did not expect that he would not do this at all. Instead, he went to the island nation. The island nation was adjacent to Huaxia. The spiritual energy was not too thin, especially when the Tree of Life was gradually improving the spiritual energy in the world. This caused the spiritual energy in the island nation to become even denser. This was something that Tang Zheng had personally experienced in the island nation the last time. There were restrictions to activating the Mountain River Blood Sacrifice Array and summoning the demons back. That was, it had to be near Huaxia, a place with abundant spiritual energy. Otherwise, the array would not be successfully activated. If it were not for this restriction, the Rockefeller family would not have traveled thousands of miles and risked exposure to activate this array in Heavenly Mountain. The Hundred Faces Star Lord was obviously smarter than the Rockefeller family and knew more about the secrets. Therefore, he took a step back and completed this operation in the island nation. Moreover, more people died in the sacrifice because, after all, it was in the island nation and not Huaxia. In order to maximize the effect, the 100 Faces Star Lord did not hesitate to sacrifice several times more people. Although Tang Zheng was unwilling to admit it, he knew that his worries were probably true. The demons had returned to this world. The thing that he had always wanted to stop had happened. A strong sense of frustration hit him, causing him to lie on the sofa in defeat. Nana sensed his depression and crawled over. She asked with concern, "Brother, what's wrong?" Tang Zheng took a deep breath and shook his head weakly. "Tang Zheng, what's wrong?" Su Tian also sensed that something was wrong and quickly asked. "Director Su, I'm afraid that what we have always wanted to stop has failed in the end. The demons have returned." "Ah!" Su Tian let out a scream. With a thud, the phone fell to the ground. He quickly picked it up and asked breathlessly, "Are you sure?" "I'm pretty sure." "Could it be that someone in the island nation has activated the Mountain River Blood Sacrifice Array?" "Yes, and this must be done by the 100 Faces Star Lord." Su Tian's breathing was like a bellows. He could not calm down for a long time. Finally, he asked helplessly, "Then what should we do?" "Make all the preparations. The demons have returned. This world is going to be in chaos." Tang Zheng said weakly. "I'll immediately report to the director." Su Tian did not have time to say more and quickly hung up the phone. Tang Zheng closed his eyes and sank into the sofa. His brain was spinning rapidly. The demons had returned. How should he deal with them? With his cultivation, he was afraid that there was no way to deal with them. Although he was already a second-grade golden core, the demons had more masters and greater destructive power. With his own strength, it was like a mantis trying to stop a car. Do I really have to rebuild the stairway to heaven and let all the practitioners in the human realm beyond heaven return to resist the demon's attack? But my cultivation has not reached the level to break the restriction of the Imperial City and release the 5-clawed golden dragon. How can I take out the dark stone of heaven and earth under the Imperial City? He shook his head violently and was very confused. Empyrean Fairy looked at him curiously and said, "What happened? I heard you say that the demons have returned. Are the demons in the human realm beyond heaven coming back?" Empyrean Fairy already knew the details of the expulsion of the practitioners to the human realm beyond heaven hundreds of years ago. Tang Zheng let out a long sigh and said, "Yes." "Then what's the trouble?" "They were originally people of this world." Empyrean Fairy did not take it seriously. "The demons have existed in this world for thousands of years. What's the fuss about their return?" Tang Zheng shook his head. "It's not what you think. The demons are cruel by nature. Once they return, the people in this world will suffer." Empyrean Fairy looked at him strangely and said, "You and Qin Shi Huang are both Skywalkers, but there is a big difference between the two of you. He will never be troubled like you. The lives of ordinary people are like ants in his eyes. He will never care about their lives. He is the Emperor of all ages. I am just an ordinary person. I can't be like him." Tang Zheng smiled bitterly. "Then what are you going to do?" Empyrean Fairy asked curiously. Tang Zheng shook his head. "I have not thought of a way yet. I can only wait and see." Tian Chanzi went to the island nation. Let's wait for his news. Since the demons had returned, Tang Zheng could not leave Huaxia. What if the demons returned and the people around him were harmed? The most important thing now was to figure out the movements of the demons after they returned. Were they still in the island nation, or had they already snuck back to Huaxia, and what their goal was? However, the necessary preparations could still be done. Lu Qingmei was still on a business trip, so he had to return to the capital as soon as possible. He was more at ease with his own woman by his side, so that he could protect them to the greatest extent. As for his grandfather, Tang Zheng had already made plans for Yi Yuan to bring him and the rest of the witch clan, including the elders of the witch clan who were overseas, to the island. That was his final base camp. The island was safer than the mainland. Chapter 773. The excuse that Tang Zheng had prepared did not come in handy. The old man was very reasonable and casually agreed. In fact, as long as it was Tang Zheng's decision, the old man would generally not oppose it. He knew that he could not drag his grandson down. Since his grandson did this, then there must be a reason. He would just do as he was told. Seeing that the old man was so reasonable, Tang Zheng was moved, and thought of something else. The Empyrean fairy had once said that the life-prolonging pill only had one effect in a person's life, which meant that his grandfather still had 9 years of life left. Tang Zheng was gloomy. He decided that the next time they met, he would definitely teach his grandfather the cultivation method. Although it was a bit late for him, it would still improve his physique and have the effect of prolonging his life. Then, he contacted Yi Yuan, the witch clan elder, and Wu Junshan respectively, explaining the seriousness of the situation in detail. He ordered the 3 of them to meet up and move everyone to the island, as well as guard against any possible dangers. They also felt the seriousness of their attitude, and their tones were heavy. After explaining all this, Tang Zheng called Lu Qingmei. Lu Qingmei's voice had a trace of experience. In the past, she was an ice beauty, but after meeting Tang Zheng, her ice mountain melted. Even the way she treated people and things in her life became a lot gentler, not as cold as before. However, after leaving school and entering the workplace, her personality had changed quite a bit. When she received a call from Tang Zheng, she was pleasantly surprised. Although the 2 of them were close, they did not talk on the phone like a normal young couple in love. Even the few women around Tang Zheng were not like this. They all understood that Tang Zheng had too many things to do, so it was impossible for him to take out so much time to talk about love with them like a normal boy. This bit of understanding and tolerance was precious. When Tang Zheng occasionally thought about it, he could not help but feel a warm current flowing through his heart. After receiving a call from Tang Zheng, Lu Qingmei was very happy. "Sister Mei, what are you busy with?" "I just finished talking to my client." "Why are you so obedient and calling me?" Lu Qingmei said gently. "I missed you," Tang Zheng said sincerely. These were indeed words from the bottom of her heart. She had not seen Lu Qingmei for quite some time, so she really missed her teacher. Fortunately, he was making the call in his bedroom. Otherwise, if the women outside heard it, who knew what kind of bloody case it would cause? Lu Qingmei was silent for a while before she said emotionally, "I miss you too." "Sister Mei, are you done with your work?" "Almost." "What's wrong? Come back quickly. Do you really miss me so much that you can't wait to see me?" Lu Qingmei asked mischievously. "Yes." Tang Zheng didn't tell her the real reason because he didn't want to scare her. "All right, I'll fly back tomorrow. You have to pick me up at the airport." "I will definitely be there." In the evening, Mu Hongyan came back from work. This time, the room full of beauties became even more lively. Even Fang Shishir couldn't help but look at him a few more times, making him feel like he was sitting on pins and needles. Mu Hongyan and Fang Shishir were old acquaintances. After meeting, they were very close. After dinner, Mu Hongyan looked at the room full of girls. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, she was going to take Nana back to her home. Nana insisted on staying. Coupled with Fang Shishir's persuasion, she also stayed. A room full of beauties, only Tang Zheng was a man. It was really like entering a country of women. There were all kinds of beauties, a feast for the eyes. Tang Zheng didn't have much mood to appreciate the beauty. He went to the study with Mu Hongyan to talk about Europe. When she heard that he was going to expand the company's business to Europe, Mu Hongyan was shocked. "Aren't you selling a bit too much? Although we are already famous in China, isn't it too early to go to Europe?" Mu Hongyan evaluated with her own professional vision. Tang Zheng shook his head and said, "I have already talked to several European royal families. They will give us green light and give us the greatest help. You don't have to worry. The European market will be easier to develop than the domestic market. Moreover, this is to prepare for taking over the Rockefeller family's business in the future. This step must be taken. Hiss. This time, Mu Hongyan was really shocked. Of course, she knew about the Rockefeller family. It was because she knew that she was so shocked when she heard the news. It was the world's top behemoth. Tang Zheng actually said that he wanted to take over the Rockefeller family. Mu Hongyan felt that the world was too crazy. Although Tang Zheng was very good and often created miracles, Mu Hongyan still felt that what he said was impossible. I have already talked to several European royal families. When the time comes, they will help us deal with this matter. You can rest assured, so I want you to send someone you can trust to Europe. I'll go. Mu Hongyan volunteered herself without hesitation. No. Tang Zheng quickly rejected. He kept some of the people who were important to him by his side. How could he let her go? Why? There is no why. Tang Zheng did not tell her about the return of the devil race, so as to save her trouble. Mu Hongyan was not a person who was easy to persuade, especially in business. She was a complete strong woman. I have to go. This matter is too sensitive and too important. I must go to do it well. Others may mess it up. This, Tang Zheng still wanted to argue, but Mu Hongyan had already decided. It's settled. I'll go to Europe tomorrow. During this time, I'll have to trouble you to help me take care of Nana. Seeing her so insistent, Tang Zheng thought about it again. After the return of the devil race, they would definitely not go to Europe. Instead, they would mess around in Huaxia. Then there would be no threat in Europe. Therefore, if she went to Europe, she would leave the center of the storm and be safer. Well, take care of yourself. Tang Zheng promised, but did not forget to remind her. In the dead of night, Tang Zheng was lying alone in bed. Although there were many beautiful women living in this house, there were only two who really had an intimate relationship with him. However, he did not dare to sneak into bed like he did in the palace. The walls had ears. If he was discovered by someone, it would be embarrassing. Moreover, favoritism would hurt people's hearts. As the saying goes, 1 monk has water to drink, 2 monks have water to drink, and 3 monks have no water to drink. Tang Zheng's situation was similar. If there was only one woman, he could hold her in his arms with a clear conscience. But there were 2 women, so he could only lie in bed alone. The next day, Mu Hongyan went to the company early, arranged the work, and then flew directly to Europe. Tang Zheng also came to the airport alone. When he saw Lu Qingmei coming out of the airport, he quickly greeted her and gave her a big hug. In public, Lu Qingmei failed to live up to expectations and blushed. Ever since she was young, she had never let go of anything so easily. But his embrace was so warm, kind and comfortable that she couldn't extricate herself and didn't want to separate. After a long time, the two finally separated. Looking at the familiar face close at hand, Tang Zheng smiled and said, "Sister Mei, you've become more beautiful." "So you mean I was ugly before?" "Of course not. You used to be very beautiful, but now you're even more beautiful. You're just making me happy. I've been so busy during this time. I feel old. You've really become more beautiful, and your skin is better." Tang Zheng said seriously. Lu Qingmei's eyes bloomed with joy. Her colleagues often praised her like this. She occasionally noticed this when she looked in the mirror. Her skin was indeed smoother and more delicate than before, and even her physique had become more outstanding. In fact, this was all thanks to her cultivation. After the toxins in her body were removed, her skin was moisturized by the true qi. Naturally, it was ruddy and lustrous, as delicate as jade. "Well, you're a sweet talker. I'll reward you later." "What reward?" Tang Zheng smiled evilly. Lu Qingmei pinched him fiercely and said, "What nonsense are you thinking in your head? You're asking for a beating. Well, don't hit me. So many people are watching you murder your husband in public. It's not good for your reputation." Tang Zheng said mischievously. Who's my husband? I think you're getting more and more improper. Lu Qingmei took his hand and sat in the car with him. They went straight to Lu Qingmei's house. I'm going to take a shower, and then we'll go eat together. Lu Qingmei put down her luggage and went into the bathroom, leaving Tang Jing sitting alone. Listening to the sound of water coming from the bathroom, his mood had already drifted in. But Lu Qingmei deliberately locked the door, so he couldn't break in even if he wanted to. Sister Mei, do you want me to scrub your back? Tang Jing asked. No, everyone knows Sima Zhao's heart. Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. Tang Jing said with a bitter face, my heart is very pure. It's a pleasure to help others. Teacher Lu, didn't you teach me this in the past? You're not allowed to call me Teacher Lu. Lu Qingmei said coquettishly. Every time she heard Tang Jing call her Teacher Lu, she would feel flustered. Tang Jing didn't listen. He had already tested her several times. Every time he called her Teacher Lu, she would become agitated and sensitive. This was her Achilles heel. So, he turned a deaf ear and mischievously called out, Teacher Lu, let's take a shower together. This way we can save water. Bang! The bathroom door was suddenly pushed open. Lu Qingmei, wrapped in a bath towel, rushed out with a red face and angrily said, didn't I tell you not to call me Teacher Lu? See how I'll deal with you. She directly pounced on Tang Jing and began to punch and kick him. Tang Jing pretended to be pitiful and shouted, a teacher is hitting a student. I want to protest. Your protest is invalid. The one I'm hitting is you. Disobedient, bad student. The two wrestled into a ball, gasping for breath. Not long after, Lu Qingmei's bath towel was torn off, revealing her naked body. Tang Zheng's clothes also became extremely messy. Tang Zheng tightly hugged her, his hands moving up and down her body. She didn't have the strength to resist and allowed him to do whatever he wanted. However, she was very happy in her heart. Her eyes were watery, like melted ice. Go to the bed. Lu Qingmei couldn't help but hook her arms around his neck. Right here, on the living room's sofa. We haven't tried it yet. Tang Zheng said with a mischievous smile. Chapter 774. After a hearty battle, the two hugged each other. Lu Qingmei was lying in his arms. Tang Zheng's fingers touched a strand of her hair and twirled it around his fingertips. The fresh fragrance of her hair lingered at the tip of his nose. Sister Mei, I'll give you 2 magic weapons. Magic weapons? Really? Lu Qingmei propped up her upper body in surprise. Her snow-white chest swayed in front of Tang Zheng's eyes, making his mouth dry and his tongue restless. Lu Qingmei winked playfully. You want to be naughty again? If you don't seduce me, I won't. Come on, I'm not afraid of you. Lu Qingmei deliberately licked her lips. At the beginning, Tang Zheng still had the initiative, but later on, Lu Qingmei took the initiative. After all, Lu Qingmei was not a young girl like Fang Shishir. She was a few years older than Tang Zheng and more mature. Moreover, she had been separated from Tang Zheng for so long. Once her emotions were aroused, she was very fierce. The battle just now was very fierce, and Tang Zheng was almost defeated. Let's talk about business first. I'll deal with you after I rest for a while. Tang Zheng coughed awkwardly. With a thought, the dragon-trapped rope and the sumaru bag appeared in his palm. What are these? Lu Qingmei's attention was immediately attracted by these 2 magic weapons. $. This is the dragon-trapped rope. It can be used to attack and defend. It's very useful for self-defense. This is the sumaru bag. Don't you women have a lot of things? With this, you don't have to take a suitcase when you go out in the future. Wow, so magical. Although Lu Qingmei was also a cultivator, it was the first time she had come into contact with magic weapons. Of course, I have removed my connection with them. After dripping blood to bind them, they will be yours. These two magic weapons were almost useless to Tang Zheng. Moreover, among the few women around him, only Lu Qingmei didn't have a magic weapon. Of course, Tang Zheng couldn't favor one and discriminate against the other. Thus, he gave her his Dharma treasure. Lu Qingmei excitedly dripped a drop of blood to bind it to her, and then familiarized herself with the use of the magic weapon. She played with it so much that she even ignored Tang Zheng's request for a battle, which made Tang Zheng not know whether to laugh or cry. Sister May, there's another reason why I called you back to the capital. Recently, the world is not peaceful. For your safety, you'd better not leave the capital and move to my place. In any case, he already had a house full of women, so he didn't mind adding one more. If she wanted to kill him or torture him, it was all up to her. Move to your place. Lu Qingmei stopped playing with the magic weapon and looked at him suspiciously. Yes, this is for your safety. Who else do you have there? A woman's sixth sense was truly terrifying. She immediately asked. Tang Zheng said resentfully, there are still a few people. Women? Cough cough. Tang Zheng dryly coughed, not only women, there are also children. Who are there? There are Shi, Wu, and Nana that you know. There are also Fu Yao and that you don't know. Fang Shi. Lu Qingmei immediately frowned, and her whole body became uncomfortable. I am her teacher. If you let me go to your place, how will I face her? Actually, you're not that different in age. You can be friends. Tang Zheng shamelessly advised. I'm not going. Lu Qingmei immediately frowned. What kind of identity do I have to live with you? Moreover, I have to face Fang Shi. It's so embarrassing. But I'm worried about your safety. Tang Zheng earnestly persuaded. If I say I'm not going, then I'm not going. I can take care of myself. Moreover, this is the capital. What kind of danger can there be? Moreover, aren't you also in the capital? If there's danger, you can come and save me. Tang Zheng scratched his head. He really couldn't think of a way to persuade her. But for the sake of safety, how could he be at ease to let her live here alone? Thus, he steeled his heart and said, even if you don't want to go, you have to go. I'm not going. Let's see what you can do to me. I'll kidnap you. You can try. I'll try. Tang Zheng immediately hugged her. She hurriedly struggled. Not long after, the two were once again wrestling. This time, they fought from the living room to the bedroom. In the end, Tang Zheng displayed his might and obtained victory. Lu Qingmei was unreasonably kidnapped by him. Sitting in the car, Lu Qingmei was restless. Her face was as red as an apple. She didn't know what kind of deadlock she would face. When she saw the room full of beautiful women, she really had a dazzling feeling. Even as a woman, she couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. If any other man were to come here, he would probably have a nosebleed. Lu Qingmei fiercely glared at Tang Zheng from the corner of her eyes. It was as if she was silently asking him when he established such a big country of women. Fang Shi was very surprised to see Lu Qingmei. The two hadn't seen each other since graduation. Tang Zheng still didn't dare to openly say that Lu Qingmei was his woman. He only said that it wasn't too peaceful recently, so he asked teacher Lu to stay here for a while. Fang Shi was very happy. She was alone and wasn't familiar with the others. She was bored to death. With Lu Qingmei, she just happened to have one more companion. Only Wu looked deeply at Lu Qingmei, but didn't say anything. She had been by Tang Zheng's side for a long time. She was clearer than anyone about the women by his side. She was sure that the relationship between Tang Zheng and Lu Qingmei was definitely not as simple as a student and teacher. On the other hand, it was Princess Annie who was carefree as she casually said, Tang Zheng, you really made me drop my glasses. Where did you go to kidnap this great beauty? Didn't I say it before? She is my teacher. Tang Zheng said without changing his expression. And curled her lips. She didn't believe him and said, "Your lies are only for sure." Tang Zheng was incomparably embarrassed. Could it be that his ability to lie was so bad? Seeing that she was about to ask more questions, Tang Zheng's phone rang, allowing him to escape a calamity. The phone call was from Su Yingtian. He wanted him to see him immediately because there was something important. Tang Zheng greeted the girls and hurriedly left. There were too many women in this group, so it was better to temporarily avoid them. Moreover, there was Empyrean Fairy at home, so he was very relieved. Tang Zheng once again came to the heavily guarded courtyard house. Su Yingtian brought him through the layers of checkpoints. Tang Zheng could clearly feel that this time, whether it was in the open or in the dark, the defense was even stronger. It seemed that the authorities were also quite afraid of the return of the demon clan. Su Yingtian's face was gloomy the entire time. He warned in a low voice, "Listen more and speak less later. Don't speak carelessly. It will only cause trouble." Tang Zheng had already guessed a bit and asked, "Is it about the return of the demon clan?" "Yes." Su Yingtian didn't hide anything. "I've already reported this matter to the chief. The chief attaches great importance to this matter, so he called for this high-level secret meeting. Many heads will be participating. The implications are huge, so don't speak casually." "Then why did you call me here?" "You are a cultivator and know everything about the demon clan. Moreover, you are a consultant of our National Security Bureau, which is equivalent to a professional. Perhaps we will ask for your opinions and suggestions." Hearing that he was going to meet so many heads, Tang Zheng was very calm, without the slightest bit of nervousness or excitement. He nodded expressionlessly and said, "I understand." The two came to a large conference room. As far as the eye could see, there were already more than 10 people sitting there. All of them had the face of an official. Many of them were big shots who often appeared in the news. Tang Zheng did not care much about these things, nor did he recognize who exactly was who. He just sat down in the back row and looked down, as if this matter had nothing to do with him. Su Yingtian went to do other things. Tang Zheng was bored to death. He turned his eyes and swept them over each face. Perhaps if it were anyone else, they would have already been so excited that they could not control themselves, but Tang Zheng's state of mind was truly very mysterious. The matters of the outside world could not affect his mood at all. These people either lowered their heads and whispered or talked loudly. No one paid attention to Tang Zheng sitting in the back row against the wall. Suddenly, Tang Zheng's eyes turned to the door and saw a familiar face walk in. His pupils could not help but shrink. Xing Feng. He actually came too. Tang Zheng frowned inwardly. Xing Feng also saw Tang Zheng, and a light flashed through his eyes. When enemies met, their eyes would be exceptionally red. The two had already formed many grudges, and each wanted to get rid of the other. However, in this situation, there was clearly no need to make a big fuss. They only glanced at each other from afar, all of their hatred unspoken. Xing Feng did not directly have the qualifications to sit at the conference table. Instead, he sat in the back row and looked at Tang Zheng from afar. From this, it could be seen how high the standard of this meeting was. Dong dong dong. A series of powerful footsteps sounded, and the burly bureau chief walked in. Everyone hurriedly stood up. Tang Zheng did not want to be unconventional, so he also stood up. Su Yingtian followed beside the bureau chief and sat at the end of the conference table. Although his seat was at the back, he was at the conference table after all. Obviously, he was treated much better than Xing Feng. In fact, the reason Su Yingtian could sit in this position was all thanks to Tang Zheng. The Tian Shan operation not only crushed the Rockefeller family's conspiracy, but also captured the terrorists who had been hiding. This was crucial to the stability and unity of the country. This time, Su Yingtian was the first to report the return of the demons to his superiors. Su Yingtian's position naturally rose. Moreover, he was an old man for decades. Compared to Xing Feng, who seemed to have soared into the sky, his foundation was more stable and he was more popular. Tang Zhen glanced at Xing Feng, only to see him glancing at Su Yingtian without leaving a trace. The cold light that flashed in his eyes was shocking to see. Dogs can't change their habits. Xing Feng is indeed up to no good. Tang Zhen thought silently and sat down with the others without saying a word. There were also people sitting on both sides of Tang Zhen. They sat upright and still, and did not smile. Obviously, they were not small officials. In this room, other than the waiters who served tea and water, Tang Zhen was the youngest. Fortunately, the bureau chief attracted everyone's attention. Otherwise, he would have become the center of attention. It was not easy for a new face to sneak into a meeting of this level. There were many people who were curious about him. Tang Zhen already saw some people secretly glancing at him a few times. Chapter 775. The bureau chief's expression was serious as he said, "This is top secret information. Everyone, remember the rules of confidentiality. Once you see it, remember it in your heart. You are not allowed to spread it." Everyone's heart skipped a beat. Their originally relaxed expressions were immediately replaced by an unprecedented seriousness. The staff immediately distributed the information. There were a few simple pieces of A4 paper and photos. Everyone immediately lowered their heads to read. Tang Zhen also received a copy. He carefully read it. There was an introduction to the demon race and the expulsion of cultivators hundreds of years ago. It was the same as what Tang Zhen knew. He focused more on the photos. His heart skipped a beat. These photos were very cruel. They were all corpses with long bloodstains on their necks. There were probably tens of thousands of corpses. The other photos clearly showed a strange pattern. Complicated dark red lines outlined a huge pattern on the ground. Tang Zheng's eyelids twitched. Wasn't this the formation of the Mountain River blood sacrifice array? Those red lines were formed by blood. Moreover, this formation was bigger than the one on Sky Mountain. The last photo was taken of the sky. Dark clouds gathered and formed a huge circle, like a tornado. One could vaguely see human figures moving in the dark clouds. It was frightening. Tang Zhen closed his eyes after reading it. He leaned back in his chair and took a few deep breaths. His heart was pounding. Originally, he was 90% sure that the demon race had returned. Now that he saw these photos, the return of the demon race was a certainty. He really wanted to question Hundred Faces Star Lord. Why did he do this? To unify this planet? He had been trapped in Mount Buzhou for tens of thousands of years. How could he still have such ambitions? However, when he thought of 100 Transformations Star-Lord's childish appearance, he felt a chill in his heart. Back then, 100 Transformations Star-Lord had wanted to turn them all into dolls. 100 Transformations Star-Lord had probably done so purely for fun. He had treated the world as a game and everyone as dolls in the game. He had already limited himself to playing with a few people. He wanted to play with the world in the palm of his hand. Tang Zhen cursed fiercely in his heart. Why didn't anyone kill him back then? Why did he just trap him in Mount Buzhou? Why did no one stop him after tens of thousands of years? Originally, Tang Zhen thought that his cultivation speed was very fast and was already very satisfied. He couldn't wait to increase his cultivation by a few times. That way, he might be able to stop the 100 Change Star Sovereign's absurd actions. The others reacted even more strongly than Tang Zhen. Many others also seemed to be encouraged and offered suggestions. Their morale gradually rose, as if they didn't take the demon race seriously at all. In their eyes, perhaps the ancients from hundreds of years ago were ignorant. That was why they spread false rumors and made the demon race so powerful. Tang Zhen sighed inwardly. Although this kind of high morale could be used and didn't destroy their own morale or boost the prestige of others, pride and arrogance would lead to great losses. Although he wanted to listen more and speak less, he saw that these people didn't realize the seriousness of the problem at all. Instead, they spoke with assurance and assurance. In the end, the ones who died were countless officers and soldiers. He really couldn't bear it. The demon race isn't as simple as you think. Tang Zheng's voice wasn't very loud, but this contrary tone was extremely ear-piercing and immediately attracted everyone's attention. Many people turned their heads to look for the speaker, but after looking for a long time, they still couldn't figure out who it was. Who is the one boosting the morale of others and destroying their own prestige? Cowering before the battle is a great taboo for military strategists. Who is it? Obediently stand up for me, someone shouted. The people around Tang Zheng heard him speak and couldn't help but lock their gazes on him. The others finally found their target and began to pay attention. Sharp gazes focused on his face, but Tang Zheng was completely unaware. He indifferently swept his gaze over the person who had reprimanded him and said, "I'm right here." "Who are you? So young, yet you're already speaking nonsense." The other party was stunned, apparently not expecting that such an excessively young person would be present at the meeting. He instantly became even more displeased. Most of the people here were old comrades. Since when was it the turn of a brat who was still wet behind the ears to criticize them? Hearing the other party reprimanding him for speaking nonsense, Tang Zheng unhappily frowned. He had sincerely raised his opinion to prevent them from suffering losses, but now it was his fault. Tang Zheng was in a bad mood, but he didn't care about Su Yingtian's warning. He loudly said, "Without investigation, you have no right to speak. You don't understand the actual situation, so why do you say I'm speaking nonsense?" "I don't understand the actual situation, but do you?" the other party fiercely retorted. Tang Zheng shrugged and said, "In any case, I understand a little more than you." Seeing that the atmosphere was at daggers drawn, Su Yingtian couldn't sit still and hurriedly stood up to smooth things over. "This is Tang Zheng, the consultant of our National Security Bureau." Tang Zheng. Many people immediately frowned. Although they didn't immediately recognize Tang Zheng, many people were not unfamiliar with this name. After all, he frequently appeared in various major events, so these big shots would often inadvertently see his name appear in various reports. Seeing the real person this time, they couldn't help but be secretly surprised. This was because he was too young, so much so that he was the same age as many people's children, or even younger. "You're that cultivator." Tang Zheng nodded. "You're a cultivator, jackals of the same tribe as the demons. What qualifications do you have to sit in on this meeting? I think the National Security Bureau is becoming more and more outrageous." Tang Zheng frowned. "If you didn't invite me, I wouldn't have come." Su Yingtian also had an anxious expression. He repeatedly urged Tang Zheng to listen more and speak less, but Tang Zheng still couldn't hold back. These people were all old comrades, and many of them had the wrong idea of judging a hero based on age. They believed that those without hair on their mouths were not reliable. Therefore, naturally, many people didn't agree with Tang Zheng. "I invited him." A dignified voice sounded. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Everyone's gaze followed the voice. Bureau Chief. Many people's expressions changed. They didn't expect the bureau chief to invite him. This was too big of a deal. Originally, many people were prepared to bombard Tang Zheng, but they immediately swallowed their words back into their stomachs. They looked at Tang Zheng with a complicated expression. They thought to themselves, what did this brat do to deserve such respect from the bureau chief? Tang Zheng was originally full of anger, but seeing that the bureau chief helped him out of the situation, he nodded at him in acknowledgement. The bureau chief looked at him and said, "Tang Zheng, you're a cultivator, so you know more about the situation of the demons. Tell everyone." "Okay." Tang Zheng didn't decline. "Didn't you guys not like to hear it? Now, you have to listen. Previously, someone said that the strength of cultivators was too great, and that it was just an exaggeration, right?" His gaze swept over the person who said that. That person snorted and turned his head away unhappily. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth hooked up, and said, I want to say, you are completely wrong. The cultivator's strength introduced in the information in your hands is not exaggerated. In fact, there are many places that are too conservative. Cultivators are far more powerful than what they introduce. Impossible. Someone immediately exclaimed softly. Impossible, right? Then what do you think will make you believe it? Tang Zheng shook his head secretly. Although these people had good intentions in general, their knowledge was too shallow, and they were stubborn and inflexible. He decided to teach these people a lesson. This was not for their own good, but for the sake of the thousands of soldiers' lives. Otherwise, Tang Zheng would feel uneasy. Seeing that the other party was unable to come up with a reason, Tang Zheng said to himself, as the saying goes, seeing is believing, and hearing is false. Today, I will show you what a cultivator's true strength is. Let's see if it is just flowery fists and impractical legs. Chapter 776. Seeing the sudden change in Tang Zheng's aura, the previously ordinary young man became as sharp as an unsheathed sword. Seeing that the bureau chief had no intention of objecting, Tang Zheng casually pointed his finger. His true chi fluctuated, and before many people could understand what was going on, Tang Zheng had already retracted his hand. There seemed to be no reaction at all. Many people muttered, there's nothing at all. He's deliberately mystifying. The person from before laughed loudly. Ha, is this the strength of a cultivator? Bluffing to scare people. Before he finished speaking, his face turned pale, and he shouted in panic, what's going on? Why can't I move? As soon as he said that, many people also exclaimed. I can't move either. What kind of witchcraft is this? In this huge conference room, except for the bureau chief, Su Yingtian, and Xing Feng, everyone else had turned into puppets. All of them looked as if they had seen a ghost and were shouting and screaming. Anyone who realized that they couldn't control their body would feel an indescribable fear. Tang Zheng, is this your doing? Someone come, quickly catch him. Someone shouted. Hurried footsteps immediately sounded outside the door. With a creak, the door was pulled open by the guards. Because is all equal to the bureau chief frowned, waved his hand, and said, get out. The guards hurriedly retreated, leaving only those people staring at each other, unable to hide the fear in their eyes. This was just the simplest body-locking technique. With Tang Zheng's current cultivation, dealing with these ordinary people, with just a thought, these people would immediately be locked in place. Of course, he didn't do that to the bureau chief. After all, he had to give him some face. As for Su Yingtian and Xing Feng, both of them were martial artists and weren't weak. They wouldn't be immobilized so easily. Tang Zheng, you've already proven the power of a cultivator. Let them go. The bureau chief nodded at Tang Zheng. Of course, he knew the power of a cultivator, but he didn't stop him. He wanted to let these people experience it for themselves so that they wouldn't be ignorant. All right, Tang Zheng replied. With a thought, he said, you can move now. Sure enough, everyone discovered that they had regained their ability to move, and all of them turned pale with fright. This change far exceeded their imagination, and they truly felt the terror of a cultivator. Although it was just a small test, it was enough to see the strength of the Shuzha. The people who had refuted Tang Zheng earlier all quieted down and looked at the bureau chief at the same time. The bureau chief said without batting an eyelid, Tang Zheng, what do you suggest? First, we need to figure out where they are going. As for intercepting them outside the country, I don't think that's realistic, because cultivators who are strong enough don't need to rely on any tools at all. They can fly from the island nation to Huaxia. Flying through the air. Everyone was immediately attracted by these 4 words. They all found it hard to believe. You're saying that the demons can fly across the sea like birds? We can't rule out that possibility. Tang Zheng nodded. Hiss. Many people gasped. Wasn't this the legendary means of the gods? But there will always be some people who can't fly through the air. The bureau chief added. What measures do we have to deal with these people? Tang Zheng said without hesitation, then we'll intercept them outside the country. This coincided with the bureau chief's thoughts. The bureau chief nodded. Then we have to start collecting information on these people. We can't let the demon army set foot on Huaxia's land. Tang Zheng did not say a word, but he was not optimistic in his heart. The demons were everywhere. How could it be so easy to stop all of them in disguise? As for those demons who can fly through the air. The bureau chief threw another question, obviously wanting Tang Zheng to give him a satisfactory answer. Let the radar monitor them. Tang Zheng was at his wit's end. Humans were like birds, he didn't know if the radar could detect them. Then let the fighter jets intercept them. That's one way. Tang Zheng nodded. But we have to be careful. These people are very strong. Even the fighter jets might not be able to do anything to them. Since they're in the air, can't we use missiles to shoot them down? Also, why don't we attack the island nation while the demons are still in the island nation? Someone suggested. Attack the island nation? Yes, use missiles to bombard targets that the island nation can see. We can even use nuclear bombs. Decades ago, they invaded us. This time, we should treat the island nation well. These words were radical. This was equivalent to declaring war on the island nation. The consequences were unimaginable. It might even cause a world war. No one present had the guts or courage to take on this responsibility. As expected, before the others could speak, the bureau chief had already rejected it. There's no need to bring up such an unrealistic and absurd suggestion. Everyone immediately fell silent. They couldn't come up with any bloody suggestions anyway. The bureau chief turned and looked at Xing Feng. He asked, does the dragon group have any countermeasures? Xing Feng quickly stood up and said respectfully, Bureau Chief, the dragon group will definitely go all out. A new batch of mechas can be sent to the sea to face the enemy. After saying that, he glanced at Tang Zheng from the corner of his eyes. In the past, many of the dragon group's mechas were directly or indirectly destroyed by Tang Zheng. This made Xing Feng grit his teeth in hatred. Tang Zheng's eyelids twitched. He had personally witnessed the strength of the mechas. The current strength of the mechas was probably on another level. This was the trump card of the dragon group. However, using the mechas to defend against the demons might be a good idea. Thus, Tang Zheng glanced at Xing Feng and didn't object. After hearing Xing Feng's words, the bureau chief nodded. If that's the case, not only the dragon group, but the other military departments must also send out their elites. Once they find traces of the enemy, they must intercept them with all their might. Yes. The others didn't dare to disagree. They all nodded. Also, the matter of the demons is of great importance. Remember not to spread this matter. It is even more impossible to let the public know about this in case it causes social unrest. No matter what, maintaining social stability has always been the most important thing for us. The bureau chief added. The meeting continued, but the topics were closely related to the framework and core of the discussion. Tang Zheng no longer interjected, his eyes lowered to his nose lowered to his heart, silently becoming a spectator. However, the wind didn't stop blowing. There were still many people secretly looking at Tang Zheng. It was as if they wanted to remember this face. Today, Tang Zheng's performance could be said to be amazing. He made these high-ranking officials recognize him. It was more convincing than just hearing a name or some rumors. Moreover, from the bureau chief's attitude towards Tang Zheng, many people could see that this kid's future was limitless. Many of the more intelligent people had already thought of winning over this rising star. After the meeting ended, everyone left one after another. However, Tang Zheng was left behind. Tang Zheng, I heard that Tian Chanzi has already gone to the island nation. Did you find anything? The bureau chief asked directly. He didn't ask in public just now because he didn't want others to know too much. I can't contact him. I don't know what news he has. Tang Zheng shook his head. If there is any news, share it with each other. This time, it's not just a matter of one person. It's a matter of the entire nation. It concerns millions of families. I know that you have some conflicts with the Dragon Group. I hope that if there is any cooperation this time, both of you can put aside your past grudges and work together sincerely. The bureau chief advised patiently. Tang Zheng looked at him suspiciously and asked, I have to work with the Dragon Group. The Dragon Group's mechas are very powerful. They are the most powerful equipment in our army. Of course, the mechas have to be used to intercept the demons. However, if you help from the side, it will be much easier. Therefore, if there is any news, I hope that you can work together sincerely with the Dragon Group. This decision made Tang Zheng very surprised. He liked to fight alone. Even if he wanted to work together, he had never thought of working with the Dragon Group. The two of them were like fire and water. I will tell Xing Feng that he will definitely not find trouble with you. You are a magnanimous person. Let's forget about the previous conflicts. Since he had already said this, Tang Zheng couldn't not give him face. Moreover, Tang Zheng saw Su Yingtian continuously giving him looks. Obviously, he wanted him to agree. All right. Tang Zheng reluctantly agreed. I just thought of something. The Azure Dragon Hall is not weak. This force can be used to defend against the demons. He believed that the other party must know about the existence of the Azure Dragon Hall. Perhaps, he had more insider information than him. Therefore, he purposely used the Azure Dragon Hall to attract attention. Or it could be said that he wanted to force the Azure Dragon Hall to reveal themselves. Hearing the three words Azure Dragon Hall, the bureau chief's eyes flashed with a complicated expression. Tang Zheng looked at him suspiciously but didn't find anything strange. The Azure Dragon Hall is too mysterious. We also don't have accurate information. Therefore, it is not a good idea to use the people of the Azure Dragon Hall to defend against the demons. The bureau chief said calmly. Tang Zheng sighed faintly. He didn't think that the bureau chief would reject him so straightforwardly. However, since the Azure Dragon Hall, Wu Zhongli and Gong Gong were jackals of the same tribe, it meant that their attitude towards cultivators was ultimately not friendly. Seeing the return of the demons, wouldn't they have a countermeasure? With the return of the demons, the first to be affected would be the warriors. Naturally, these three mysterious organizations would be included. If we can find the people of the Azure Dragon Hall, that would be the best. Tang Zheng thought silently. However, the Azure Dragon Hall was too elusive. Where would he find their members? I know that you are a good patriotic youth. This time, you have to put in more effort. The country will not forget anyone who has contributed. The bureau chief said solemnly. Tang Zheng smiled but did not comment. He said his goodbyes and left with Su Yingtian, leaving the center of power. The bureau chief returned to the study room alone. He turned around and personally closed the door. Then, next time, when the 100 Transformation Star Sovereign was more prepared, wouldn't that mean that the demon army would be able to return smoothly? What should we do then? The bureau chief did not give up and continued to ask aggressively. Last time, you said that you had a way to deal with the 100 Change Star Sovereign. However, until now, you have not done anything. What exactly is your Azure Dragon Hall planning to do? The Great Lord looked at the bureau chief with a burning gaze. The bureau chief was not afraid at all. He raised his head and looked into the Great Lord's eyes. If you have something to say, just say it. You can't just scare me with your eyes. The Great Lord smiled faintly. I'm not trying to scare you. It's just that the Azure Dragon Hall has its own rules. It's not up to others to tell us what to do. I don't want to tell you what to do, but what's the purpose of keeping the 100 transformations star sovereign? The bureau chief continued to ask. The great lord turned his head slightly, and a mysterious smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He thought to himself, my 100-year plan is not something that you can guess. There's nothing else for me to do here. Goodbye. The great lord disappeared. As soon as he finished speaking, before the bureau chief could say anything to stop him, the great lord had already disappeared from his sight. The bureau chief's eyes kept changing. He punched the wall and said, deliberately mystifying and half-hearted. The people of the Azure Dragon Hall are getting more and more unreasonable. Tang Zheng walked alone on the street, recalling what he had seen and heard during the meeting. Now, he could only wait for the official news. Once they found traces of the demons, they would definitely inform him. Tian Chanzi, where did you run off to? You're so mysterious. He sighed deeply and suddenly raised his head. Why does this place feel so familiar? Only then did he realize that he had unknowingly come to a place not far from the Ye family. The Ye family's courtyard gate was already in sight. Although Ding Dang and I have broken up, the return of the demons is a matter of great importance. I should inform them, in case something unexpected happens. Tang Zheng walked to the Ye family gate. When the guards saw him, he couldn't help but take a few steps back. Last time, when he made a scene at the Ye family, many people suffered at his hands. Please inform Yi Tianlei or Feng Xinyang that I have something to discuss with them. Tang Zheng didn't force his way in and said politely. When the guards saw that he did not intend to barge in recklessly, he heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly turned around to report. A moment later, Yi Tianlei walked out with large strides. Tang Zheng, why are you here? Yi Tianlei's attitude was much better than last time. During this time, his dissatisfaction with Tang Zheng had gradually dissipated. Tang Zheng, you and Ding Dang have already broken up. There's no need to continue entangling with each other. Tang Zheng's lips curled into a bitter smile. He shook his head and said, I didn't come for that. I came to tell you something. I'll leave once I'm done. Hearing this, Yi Tianlei felt very regretful. In fact, he was very satisfied with Tang Zheng in all aspects. But the heavens made fools of people. In the end, the two young people didn't walk together. Say it. If there's anything you want to tell Ding Dang, I can also pass it on for you. There's no need. Tang Zheng shook his head. Since Yi Ding Dang didn't want to be together, then he had nothing to say. Oh, I was wondering who came. With such great face, you actually made Uncle Yi personally come to receive you. So it's you. An ear-piercing voice came from the gatehouse. A few people walked out confidently. Enemies on a narrow road. The person who came was actually Song Yu. Tang Zheng's eyelids twitched. Why was Song Yu at the Ye family? Tang Zheng, it's important for people to know their own limits. If you blindly pester endlessly and overestimate yourself, you'll be the one losing face in the end. Song Yu said sarcastically. Tang Zheng stared at Song Yu. He never realized that Song Yu's face was so annoying. When he first met Song Yu at Ordinary Balance's courtyard, he was a refined and courteous young master who gave people a good impression. Later on, that impression slowly slipped. Now, when Tang Zheng saw this face, he had the urge to beat someone up. In fact, Song Yu looked like a modest gentleman, but he had two faces. Back then, he appreciated Tang Zheng, so he was naturally refined and courteous. Now that Tang Zheng had far surpassed him, his modest and gentlemanly demeanor was naturally thrown out of the window. It seemed that only by using words to provoke Tang Zheng would he be able to balance out a lot. Was it shallow? Indeed, shallow. Who said that the children of large families weren't shallow? They would definitely be gentle, refined, generous, and selfless. It was just that the people of large families were better at hiding and doing superficial work. But in front of Tang Zheng, Song Yu really couldn't pretend. Seeing Song Yu's unbridled sarcasm, Tang Zheng said coldly, Song Yu, what are you doing here at the Ye family? Ha, who are you? What qualifications do you have to ask about my business? Song Yu said disdainfully, lightly raising his eyebrows, but seeing that you asked so sincerely, I'll tell you. I'm here to propose to Ding Dang. Propose? Tang Zheng was so angry that his temples were throbbing. He looked at Yi Tianlei. Uncle Yi, is this true? It's a long story. Tang Zheng, don't be so agitated. Yi Tianlei advised. Song Yu seemed to want to make Tang Zheng agitated and continued to provoke. Tang Zheng, you're so agitated. Are you very happy? I appreciate your kind intentions. Don't worry, when Ding Dang and I get married, I'll send you an invitation. Tang Zheng snorted and said directly to Yi Tianlei, Uncle Yi, you can clearly see what kind of person Song Yu is. You absolutely can't push Ding Dang into the fire pit. Tang Zheng, how can you say that? Who's the fire pit? You're pestering endlessly. Be careful that I don't hold back. Song Yu's expression turned cold as she berated. Tang Zheng's gaze turned cold as he said, I'm the one who's going to be impolite to you. I told you to stay away from Ding Dang. If you don't listen, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Tang Zheng still had Yi Ding Dang in his heart. Although he respected Yi Ding Dang's choice, when he heard the explosive news of the marriage proposal, his anger couldn't help but soar. Song Yu knew very well that she wasn't Tang Zheng's opponent. She moved slightly and hid behind Yi Tianlei, shouting, You only know how to use your hands. Such a violent person is a disgrace to culture. Ding Dang knowing you is the biggest mistake in his life. Uncle Yi, get out of the way. I want to teach this brat a lesson. Tang Zheng rubbed his fists and said angrily. This was the Ye family's gate. Yi Tianlei naturally couldn't turn a blind eye. He watched Tang Zheng attack Song Yu and hurriedly advised, Tang Zheng, calm down. Uncle Yi, how do you want me to calm down? Song Yu actually shamelessly came to propose to Ding Dang. If I don't beat him until half his body is paralyzed, then I swear I will not rest. Tang Zheng said aggressively. Song Yu wasn't afraid at all and provoked, what you say sounds better than singing. This is the Ye family. How can you do whatever you want? Where will the Ye family put their face? Song Yu wasn't afraid and was trying to sow discord. He knew that Yi Tianlei wouldn't turn a blind eye to it. Perhaps, he wanted to provoke Tang Zheng's anger and make the situation go out of control. Although Tang Zheng guessed some of the other party's thoughts, he had to get involved in today's matter. Even if it was the other party's trick, he had to step in and ruin the so-called marriage proposal. Seeing Tang Zheng's anger, Yi Tianlei continued to persuade, Tang Zheng, listen to me. It's useless for you to stir up this matter. Is it? Then who is in charge of this matter? Uncle Yi, you are Ding Dang's father, could it be that you will just watch as your daughter marries him? Tang Zheng questioned. Yi Tianlei glanced back from the corner of his eyes and didn't answer. Of course, he didn't want to marry his daughter to Song Yu. Chapter 778. Tang Zheng directly walked towards the door. Song Yu immediately shouted in a sarcastic tone, Yo, Tang Zheng, what do you think the Ye family is? You just barged in like that. If this were to spread, where would the Ye family's reputation be? It was obvious that Song Yu was trying to drive a wedge between them again. Although Yi Tianlei knew this, he had no choice but to comply with Song Yu's wishes. He stopped Tang Zheng, don't be impatient. If you barge in like this, the old man will definitely go crazy. Things will become even more difficult to handle. Tang Zheng sneered, are you saying that I should wait for the dust to settle? Then the daylily will be too late. Uncle Yi, move aside. I'm going to see Yi Xuanji, not do anything else. Tang Zheng, don't make it difficult for me. Yi Tianlei said awkwardly. Tang Zheng looked at him deeply and nodded, okay, I won't make it difficult for you. That's right, let's talk things out. Yi Tianlei let out a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a figure flashed in front of him. Tang Zheng actually passed by him and rushed into the door. Ah! Yi Tianlei was shocked. Tang Zheng's speed was too fast, causing him to be unable to guard against it. Tang Zheng, don't go in, stop. Seeing Tang Zheng rush in like lightning, Yi Tianlei hurriedly shouted to stop him. However, Tang Zheng turned a deaf ear to him. Shi Songyu's eyes could not hide the shock and horror in them, especially when Tang Zheng passed by Yi Tianlei. He was as fast as lightning, and he did not see it clearly. There was not even a trace of an afterimage. How did Tang Zheng's cultivation improve so much? Songyu's expression couldn't help but become a little ugly. Seeing Yi Tianlei chase after him, he also quickly followed. Tang Zheng was familiar with the place and arrived at the reception hall in the blink of an eye. Some people were talking loudly and enthusiastically. When Tang Zheng suddenly appeared at the entrance, he immediately received everyone's gazes. Many gazes swept over, and many people couldn't help but frown. Yi Xuanji's eyelids twitched as he stared at Tang Zheng with a complicated expression. He unhappily said, Tang Zheng, why did you barge in? Tang Zheng turned a deaf ear to her. His eyes were firmly fixed on Yi Dingdang as he strode over and asked, Songyu came to propose? Yi Dingdang looked at him expressionlessly and said, what does this have to do with you? This has nothing to do with me, but I won't just watch you fall into a pit of fire. Tang Zheng said unyieldingly. Yi Dingdang's heart thumped as if it was fiercely poked. She was a little touched, but also a little heartbroken. In fact, this period of time was also very torturous for her. She liked Tang Zheng, there was no doubt about it. Breaking up with Tang Zheng would mean completely severing ties with him. Cutting him out of her life seemed easy, but when she really did it, she realized how painful her heart was. But there was no turning back. With her unyielding personality, of course she couldn't redeem herself, although she would occasionally have such thoughts. At this moment, seeing Tang Zheng's arrival, although she looked calm on the surface, her heart was already in turmoil. When Feng Xinyang saw Tang Zheng, her eyes were filled with passion. Just as she was about to greet him, she heard Yi Xuanji loudly say, Tang Zheng, this is the Ye family, not a place for you to behave atrociously. Being ignored by Tang Zheng in front of everyone, Yi Xuanji's anger had already risen. Tang Zheng suddenly turned around and stared at Yi Xuanji from a distance. He found that there was also an extraordinary old man sitting next to him. This person was definitely not an ordinary person. He was very powerful, probably also a master. Tang Zheng immediately guessed the other party's identity. The head of the Song family, Song Jianan. It seemed that Song Yu's proposal this time was very grand. She even invited Song Jianan to be a witness. Song Yu had put a lot of thought into it. But in Tang Zheng's eyes, the head of the family was bullshit. Even if it was the emperor, he would still ruin this marriage, just like he did before. A person who doesn't even care about his own granddaughter's happiness has no right to lecture me, Tang Zheng said sarcastically. Yi Xuanji's old face was as red as a monkey's butt. He said angrily, Tang Zheng, I've always tolerated you because you're a junior, so I didn't argue with you. But there's a limit to everything. If you continue to be stubborn and pester endlessly, I'll let you know how powerful the Ye family is. Tang Zheng sneered, the Ye family is very powerful. I've finally seen it for myself. They can even sacrifice their own family's happiness for the rest of their lives. That's really powerful. Nonsense. Yi Xuanji's thoughts were seen through, and he became even more angry. This time, Song Yu invited Song Jianan to propose marriage. If it were before, Yi Xian would have had the chance to refuse. But now, the situation was pressing. The rise of the Song family made him feel a lot of pressure. But the Ye family was isolated and helpless. They were all alone. If Yi Xuanji refused again this time, and the first engagement was ruined, the Ye family would become a thorn in the side of the Song family. The Song family's first target would not be the Yan family, but the Ye family. To deal with the Ye family now, the Song family's strength was enough. By then, the Ye family would be in danger. Yi Xuanji was old and shrewd, and he easily saw through this. So this time, even though he knew that the Song family came to propose marriage, he did not reject them immediately. If Tang Zheng did not come to mess things up, perhaps Yi Xuanji would have agreed in the end. After all, this way, the Ye family could avoid a crisis. Although he sacrificed Yi Dingdang's happiness, the children of big families were mostly married to each other. How could there be so much freedom in love? On the contrary, it was more common for ordinary people to have freedom in love. This was the duty that should be fulfilled while enjoying all kinds of wealth and treatment. Yi Xuanji thought that this was a matter of course. As for Yi Dingdang's own thoughts, Yi Xuanji chose to ignore them. Song Jianan had been silently observing Tang Zheng. He was also very interested in this rising star, and thought that it was really a miracle. But miracles often did not last long, especially such a young and energetic person. There would be a day when he would fall. Moreover, Tang Zheng caused trouble everywhere. Not only was he like fire and water with the dragon group, he even recently heard that he had a conflict with the Rockefeller family. This made Song Jianan even more disregard for him. In fact, Song Jianan still felt a little regretful. Because, he originally wanted to build a connection with the Rockefeller family, so he sent Song Yu to contact the young Lord Louis, and even provided a lot of convenience for the other party. Louis was able to gather tens of thousands of people in a short period of time, naturally without Song Yu's cooperation. However, Song Yu did not know about the Mountain River blood sacrifice array at all. He thought that it was just to catch some unimportant people, not worth mentioning, and even forgot about it. The matter of Sky Mountain was kept secret very well. Even Song Yu did not know that Louis had already died in the hands of Tang Zheng. Otherwise, he would not have acted so recklessly. Song Jianan was like an old fox, smiling at Tang Zheng, and said, "Xuanji, this young man is really hot-tempered. He doesn't put anyone in his eyes at all, and he doesn't put the Ye family in his eyes at all." Tang Zheng raised his thick eyebrows. This old thing and Song Yu were indeed family. Their ability to sow discord was the same. Hearing this, Yi Xuanji slammed the chair and was about to stand up. Just at this time, Yi Tianlei rushed in and hurriedly pulled Tang Zheng, saying, "Tang Zheng, let's go out first. If there's anything, we can talk about it in private." Yi Tianlei was afraid that the old man would attack in anger, and if that happened, Tang Zheng would be at a disadvantage. In his impression, although Tang Zheng's strength was getting stronger and stronger, but after all, the older the ginger, the spicier the ginger, so he subconsciously thought that Tang Zheng was not the old man's opponent. Tang Zheng skillfully broke free from Yi Tianlei, and said sincerely, "Uncle Yi, some things can be compromised, but some things must be insisted on. You don't want Ding Dang to live in pain and regret for the rest of her life, right?" Yi Tianlei's face was conflicted. As a father, he naturally wanted his daughter to be happy. "Uncle Yi, it's hard for you to do this, so let me do it. Ding Dang, don't worry, I will definitely not let their scheme succeed." Tang Zheng solemnly promised Yi Dingdang. Yi Dingdang's heart was moved. She did not have a good impression of Song Yu. Last time at school, in order to anger Tang Zheng, she sat in Song Yu's car and got off as soon as they left the school gate. She did not want to have too much contact with Song Yu. But Song Yu was determined. This time, she even brought up Song Jia Nan to propose marriage. Although it was not finalized, Yi Dingdang could already see that Yi Xuanji was moved. Yi Dingdang was very disappointed. The so-called family was not worth mentioning in the face of benefits. Just now, she was even thinking about how Tang Zheng would react when he found out about this. She did not think that Tang Zheng would magically appear from the sky as if he had heard her thoughts. Yi Dingdang naturally did not want to marry Song Yu. Even if Yi Xuanji agreed, she would not take it seriously. So when everyone was talking about it, she did not say a word. Because, she had already made up her mind to not agree. Whether others agreed or not, it was not worth mentioning to her. As for whether it would harm the Ye family's interests, Yi Dingdang did not have much feelings for the Ye family. Naturally, she would not care. She was like an indifferent spectator, watching this group of people play out this funny scene. Others did not know what Yi Dingdang was thinking. They only saw Tang Zheng's firm attitude. Yi Xuanji finally stood up from the chair. He glared at Tang Zheng and walked step by step towards him. The earth-shattering aura made the living room seem as if it had turned into a vast ocean, with stormy waves crashing towards Tang Zheng. "Father, there's no need to do this," Yi Tianlei advised. "Go away." Yi Xuanji waved his hand. Yi Tianlei staggered and retreated, leaving only Tang Zheng to face Yi Xuanji alone. Song Yu also chased after them and coincidentally saw this scene. Her eyebrows were raised in joy as this was a perfect situation. Tang Zheng did not know the difference between life and death and provoked Yi Xuanji. Even if he did not die this time, he would at least lose a layer of skin. Of course, it would be best if Tang Zheng died in the Ye family's hands. This way, the Song family would be able to distance themselves from him. Even if someone wanted to take revenge, they would look for the Ye family. This way, the Ye family would be more firmly attached to the Song family. His chances would be greater. "Tang Zheng, you asked for it. This time, you asked for it, but in the end, you helped me." Ha! Song Yu was secretly happy. "Tang Zheng, I'll say it again. Get out of the Ye family immediately. Otherwise, I won't be polite." Yi Xuanji gave his last ultimatum. Tang Zheng did not move at all. He looked at Yi Xuanji indifferently. He did not take him seriously at all. Chapter 779. Yi Xuanji was angered to the point of blowing on his beard and glaring at Tang Zheng. His eyes flashed with an ominous glint as his 5 fingers formed into claws. With a roar, he clawed at Tang Zheng's shoulder. He was ready to teach Tang Zheng a lesson. After all, he didn't have a good relationship with Tang Zheng. However, he didn't want to kill Tang Zheng. After all, Tang Zheng had the mysterious Tian Chanzi behind him. If he offended Tian Chanzi, he would lose more than he could gain. Tang Zheng moved his feet slightly and moved his body slightly. Yi Xuanji's 5 fingers actually brushed past Tang Zheng's clothes and didn't hurt him at all. Ah! Yi Xuanji's heart skipped a beat. Tang Zheng's movement was too casual and smooth. He instantly disintegrated his attack. However, Yi Xuanji was a veteran after all. His other hand was like a long whip, grabbing at Tang Zheng's shoulder. Tang Zheng didn't dodge this time. Instead, he moved like lightning and grabbed Yi Xuanji's wrist. Up! Tang Zheng let out a low roar, and Yi Xuanji discovered that his feet had left the ground. "Shit!" Yi Xuanji cried out. He tried to land on the ground, but he found that an irresistible force lifted him up and sent him flying. Bang! Yi Xian and Yi Xuanji landed far away. They staggered back 3 steps before stabilizing their bodies. The ground under their feet was already in a mess. Yi Xuanji was still in shock. He looked at his hands and then at Tang Zheng. He couldn't understand how he lost his hands so carelessly. Everyone's expression changed. None of them were mediocre. They immediately judged that Tang Zheng's failure wasn't a coincidence. It was his true strength. In fact, they only needed to think a little to understand that in front of a master like Yi Xuanji, it was impossible for a coincidence to happen. With his strength and vision, he could kill any coincidence in the cradle. Song Jianan looked at Tang Zheng with a serious expression. He recalled the scene just now and couldn't help but secretly praise him. Whether it was the strength or the timing, they were all perfect. Not only did this require one's own strength as a foundation, but it also required the support of one's battle experience. It was rare to see someone at such a young age reach such a realm. No wonder you suffered so much at the hands of the other party. Indeed, it's not unjust. However, for the sake of the great cause of the Song family in the future, we should get rid of this nail. The killing intent in Song Jinan's heart gradually accumulated. Tang Zheng looked at Yi Xuanji indifferently and said, "Show me what you've got. Since you can't beat me, then I'll take care of this matter." Yi Xuanji was only at the first level of the Supreme Power Realm and had barely touched the threshold of the second level of the Supreme Power Realm. Compared to Tang Zheng, who had a second level of the Golden Core Realm, it seemed that there was only one level difference, but in fact, there was a huge gap between them. Tang Zheng was confident that no matter what, Yi Xuanji was no match for him. Yi Xuanji's expression kept changing. With so many people watching, if he lost again, it would really be a disgrace. He took a deep breath and said, "Tang Zheng, don't be arrogant." After that, his hands turned into claws, one in front and one behind. The air seemed to be torn apart, leaving behind afterimages of claw marks. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng stood still. When the other party was in front of him, he threw out both fists and moved forward together, like two angry dragons coming out of the sea. Bang! Bang! The fists hit the claws. The claws tried to catch the fists, but they found that the huge force directly shook them away. Tang Zheng moved his legs. With a small step, he was already in front of Yi Xuanji. The attack of his fists was not reduced, and they were aimed at Yi Xuanji's chest. Yi Xuanji retreated in a hurry and put his hands forward, trying to block the two huge fists. However, he heard a crisp sound and a sharp pain came from his wrist. Tang Zheng's fist directly broke his wrist. The fist slipped out of his arm and hit his chest. Bang! With a thunder-like explosion, Yi Xuanji was sent flying to the door. The door creaked as if it was going to fall down. Tang Zheng's series of attacks did not have any tricks. It was all strength. It was dazzling and as fast as lightning. It was a real test of one's skills. Many people were already dumbfounded. If they were shocked at the beginning, then now they were frightened. Each and every one of them looked at Tang Zheng with eyes full of disbelief and astonishment. "Father!" Yi Tianlei hurriedly helped Yi Xuanji up, patted the dust on his body, and asked with concern, "Father, how are you?" Yi Xuanji's face was ashen. It was not that he was heavily injured. Only the fracture of his wrist was a little uncomfortable, but this pain was nothing to him. He was more shocked. Tang Zheng was stronger than him, and not just a little bit stronger. He had a feeling that if Tang Zheng had not shown mercy, the fist that hit his chest would have directly shattered his ribs and even his heart. It was precisely because he knew all of this that all sorts of feelings welled up in his heart, and he was practically unable to accept such a cruel reality. He had been practicing for a lifetime and finally broke through to the first level of the Supreme Power Realm. In the eyes of others, it was already rare and commendable. However, Tang Zheng surpassed him in just over a year. What did this mean? It was like Yi Xuanji's lifetime of hard work was a joke compared to Tang Zheng, a big joke. Yi Xuanji's face was red for a while, then pale for a while, and then gloomy for a while. In short, his heart was broken. Tang Zheng no longer paid attention to Yi Xuanji. Instead, he walked to Yi Dingdang and said straightforwardly, "Your happiness is up to you. No one can tell you what to do. This is the only thing I can do for you." These words were clean and neat, but also revealed endless helplessness and pain. Because, he could not save this relationship. Yi Dingdang's eyes rippled, and a trace of dense qi rose from the depths of her eyes. She bit her lips and could not say a word. Her mood was fluctuating too violently. It was not because of Tang Zheng's amazing cultivation, but because of these words, because of Tang Zheng's heart. There was no doubt that Tang Zheng still liked her. She clearly felt this, and she also liked him. However, the hurdle in her heart was like the world's first mountain, which she could not cross at all. Feng Xinyang looked at Tang Zheng with shining eyes. The more she looked at him, the more she liked him. He was so handsome. She sighed endlessly. Why couldn't such a handsome man be her son-in-law? That would be a huge loss. However, her daughter's happiness was up to her. Feng Xinyang did not intend to interfere. Tang Zheng looked deeply at Yi Dingdang. He did not expect her to respond. Just looking at her like this, he felt that what he did was enough. Suddenly, Yi Dingdang's pupils shrank, as if she had seen something. She shouted, "Careful!" Tang Zheng's heart trembled. He hurriedly turned around and threw a punch. Bang! Tang Zheng flew out and crashed into the wall, creating a large hole. Immediately, his eyes lit up. He stared at the enemy who was charging at him like lightning, Song Jianan. He actually launched a sneak attack. Song Jianan was completely helpless. He originally thought that Yi Xuanji could deal with Tang Zheng, or even kill him. Later, he realized how ruthless and cruel reality was. It did not go according to his expectations at all. Tang Zheng's strength had exceeded everyone's expectations. Yi Xuanji's defeat was without suspense, and it was a clean defeat. Even though Yi Xuanji still had the strength to fight, it was clear that his momentum had been completely destroyed by the 2 consecutive attacks. If Song Jianan still did not make a move, then the marriage proposal would really be ruined. Killing Tang Zheng would be even more difficult. Thus, he chose the safer method of a sneak attack. He even concealed his aura and launched his attack at lightning speed. Who would have thought that at the crucial moment, Yi Dingdang's warning would cause him to fall short of success? Song Jianan had the intention of killing Tang Zheng in one strike, but in the end, he only sent Tang Zheng flying. He did not give up, and like a dragon, he followed Tang Zheng like a shadow, arriving in front of Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng angrily roared, his voice shaking the teacups in the hall to the point that they all shattered. Then, he pushed his hands forward, and the War Soul Sword appeared in his hands out of thin air, fiercely chopping down. Song Jianan saw the battle soul that appeared out of nowhere. His face showed a trace of strangeness. He already knew a lot about the divine abilities of cultivators. Seeing it with his own eyes was still amazing. However, he did not retreat. He extended his palm forward and patted the sword. Then, like a water snake, that pair of large hands actually wrapped around Tang Zheng's arm. "Shake!" Song Jianan roared. His arm exerted strength. It was as if steel needles were piercing into Tang Zheng's arm. The heart-wrenching pain caused Tang Zheng's arm to go numb. Battle Soul actually fell from his hand to the ground. Tang Zheng was extremely shocked, as no one had ever shaken the War Soul Sword out of his hands, and Song Jianan was the only one. Immediately, Tang Zheng understood that the other party's cultivation was much higher than Yi Xuanji's. This was a difficult character to deal with. Song Jianan's cultivation was indeed higher than Tang Zheng's. He had already reached the master level several years ago. In these few years, he had just broken through to the 4th level of the master level. He was 2 levels higher than Tang Zheng's cultivation. Looking at the painful expression on Tang Zheng's face, Song Jianan said proudly, "Now you've tasted the taste of my 1,000 needles bone-breaking hand. This is only the beginning. Next is the real show." 1,000 needles bone-breaking hand. Tang Zheng's eyelids twitched. The pain just now was indeed like thousands of steel needles piercing into his skin. It lived up to its name. Since there was also the word bone-breaking, then the next step was definitely to break his bones. He did not guess wrong. This 1,000 needles bone-breaking hand was a ruthless method. When facing the enemy, Song Jianan's arm was soft as if it had no bones. It was like a snake wrapping around the opponent. Then, his inner strength burst out. It was like thousands of steel needles piercing out of his skin, piercing into the opponent's skin and even into the bones. The next step was an even more tragic broken bone. The true chi that pierced into the bones would explode. A series of crackling sounds could be heard, like the sound of firecrackers. It could cause the muscles and bones of a person to explode in an instant, turning them into a pile of mud. "Break!" Song Jianan roared again, tightly grabbing Tang Zheng. He suddenly turned around and stared at his palm. He saw that his palm had been pierced through by the clear wind sword and blood was dripping down. You actually injured me. He gritted his teeth and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Ever since he became famous, he had never been in such a sorry state. His palm had been pierced by a little girl who was still wet behind the ears. This was a great humiliation. However, he was also shocked in his heart. Other than the fact that he had underestimated his opponent, the most important reason was that Yi Dingdang's sword art was too exquisite. It caught him off guard. Of course, if he had been more careful, even if there were two Yi Dingdang, they wouldn't have been able to hurt him. All of this was a coincidence. But an injury was an injury. With so many pairs of eyes watching, there was no way to argue. The others were also stunned as they looked at the clear wind sword in Yi Dingdang's hand that was still dripping with blood. Suddenly, Yi Tianlei shouted, "Dingdang, be careful." He threw himself at his daughter without a care for his own safety. This was because he had already seen the strong killing intent in Song Jianan's eyes. Even if Yi Dingdang was a member of the Ye family, Song Jianan would definitely kill her to protect his own face. He was not wrong. Song Jianan really did make a move. Song Jianan's large hand reached out to grab Yi Dingdang. With Yi Dingdang's cultivation, as long as she fell into his hands, it would be hard for her to escape. Yi Dingdang panicked and the clear wind sword turned into a blur as it quickly pierced towards Song Jianan. However, Song Jianan had already seen the power of the clear wind sword and had already thought of a way to avoid it. He easily dodged the sword and his large hand reached towards Yi Dingdang's head. Don't! Yi Tianlei rushed over and his large fist carried the sound of wind and thunder as it flew towards Song Jianan. Pang! Yi Tianlei flew out and spat out a mouthful of blood in midair. Song Jianan's attack was slightly blocked and his hand fiercely descended. Yi Dingdang could not dodge and was almost in despair because she could clearly feel the pressure and aura coming from above her head. Go to hell! Suddenly, a shout came from behind Song Jianan. It was Tang Zheng's attack. Song Jianan had been on guard against Tang Zheng. When he heard the sound, his other hand pushed backwards. Pang! The two palms fiercely hit each other. However, Song Jianan did not feel that Tang Zheng was sent flying. Instead, he stuck to his palm like glue. What's going on? He felt that something was strange and felt a strong wind behind him. He had no choice but to give up on Yi Dingdang and turn around to face Tang Zheng. Pang! Another palm, and the other two palms also stuck together. For eyes met, and Song Jianan felt a bit strange in his heart. The fourth level of the Supreme Power Realm was the accumulation of his hard work. He had just broken through recently, but he was demoted just like that. All his hard work was in vain. This kind of feeling was really unpleasant. What made him even more fearful was that this was not the end. If this continued, he dared to conclude that his cultivation would be reduced to nothing. What are you doing? Hurry up and help me. Song Jianan shouted at the top of his lungs. Song Yu seemed to have woken up from a dream. A fierce look flashed in her eyes and she rushed over. Tang Zheng braced himself and prepared to deal with Song Yu's attack. Unexpectedly, Song Yu did not attack him at all. Instead, she swept past him and attacked Yi Dingdang. Yi Dingdang thrust her sword forward, the tip of her sword was extremely sharp, but it did not force Song Yu back. He was like an incomparably ferocious lion, and in his hand, a cold glint of light appeared as he clashed with Qingfeng's sword. Yi Dingdang knew Song Yu very well. Seeing him so fierce, she could not help but be shocked. How did you become so powerful? In the past, Song Yu needed others to protect him. But now, with the strength he had shown, he definitely did not need ordinary people to protect him. His strength was far beyond other people's expectations. Song Yu sneered proudly. The long sword in her hand quickly attacked Yi Dingdang and she said, "It's too late for you to realize it now." Although he did not want to destroy the flower, the situation had already developed beyond his control. He could no longer hide. Although Yi Dingdang had Qingfeng's sword and Chasing Wind's sword technique, Song Yu was not weak either. The long sword in her hand danced in an airtight manner. Her power was definitely not weak. Her cultivation was not weaker than Yi Dingdang. Especially her sword technique, it was very powerful and had extraordinary power. What sword technique is that? Yi Dingdang cried out in surprise. Song Yu coldly snorted and said, "You finally know how powerful I am. You dare to gang up and attack my grandfather. Don't think you will have an easy time." Shwa shwa shwa. Sword light filled the sky. Yi Dingdang was actually enveloped by the sword light. She was in danger. Seeing this, Tang Jing impatiently shouted, "Song Yu, you hid your strength so deeply." Although he knew that Song Yu's cultivation was not weak, he did not expect her to be so powerful. She was even able to hide from his eyes. This was definitely not an ordinary matter. He had to admit that he had underestimated Song Yu. Chapter 781. The speed at which Tang Jing absorbed the power was very fast. Song Jianan's cultivation dropped by another level, to the second level of the supreme power realm. His face had already turned pale. This kind of blow almost made him collapse. He couldn't help but roar, "Tang Jing, what kind of demonic technique are you using? How can you absorb my power?" The others only saw that the two of them were in a stalemate, but they didn't know that Tang Jing was absorbing Song Jianan's power. When they heard these words, they were all shocked. Tang Jing felt that the surging power in his meridians was gathering in his dantian. It was completely absorbed by the golden core, and then it was continuously converted into genuine qi. He felt that his cultivation was soaring rapidly. Suddenly, a terrifying light burst out from his eyes, which was breathtaking. Third level of the golden core. Tang Jing exclaimed secretly. This was really a rocket-like speed. He had actually improved his cultivation so easily. This sky-swallowing technique was indeed extraordinary. It could absorb the enemy's power and immediately convert it into his own cultivation. No wonder some people would be immersed in this feeling and blindly use the sky-swallowing technique to improve their cultivation, forgetting to cultivate hard. Because this was really too tempting. Even he couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. Song Jianan also noticed the change in Tang Jing's momentum. It was obvious that his strength had increased a lot. He became more and more shocked, and cold sweat broke out on his head. As smart as he was, of course, he understood that Tang Jing must have absorbed his power and turned it into his own. He had never heard of this kind of divine skill. He couldn't help but feel that his liver and guts were about to burst. He shouted, hurry up. Song Yu's attack power had increased greatly. Yi Dingdang was overwhelmed by the dazzling sword technique. Yi Tianlei and Feng Xinyang had been hit by Song Jianan's two palms and had lost their resistance. It was impossible for them to help Yi Dingdang. Yi Xuanji's expression changed. He hadn't lost his fighting strength, but he could only watch his granddaughter in danger. Song Yu's sword technique was very gaudy, but within the gaudy was an extremely sharp sword move that had a very strong bewildering effect. If an ordinary sword technique was too flashy, its attacking power would naturally be greatly reduced. However, this sword technique was different. It was unknown what kind of genius the creator of this sword technique was, to actually hide so many killing moves within the flashy sword technique, causing people to be unable to guard against them. It was another series of dazzling attacks. Yi Dingdang was at the center of the sword light. She brandished the clear wind sword to resist. However, most of Song Yu's sword moves were feints. Actually, I went to the Ye family today to tell you guys about this matter. I was delayed just now. Tang Zheng continued, you should all know about the demon race, right? The three people nodded. The demon race was a branch of the cultivators. Moreover, there was the matter of the demon god descending. They had more or less heard some rumors. A few hundred years ago, the cultivators were banished to the sky beyond heaven, but now the demon race has returned to this world. They are still in the island nation and no one knows when they will sneak back to Huaxia. The demon race has returned. The three people sucked in a breath of cold air. They had seen Tang Zheng's growth and strength. They had a more comprehensive and profound understanding of cultivators and understood the power of cultivators. Hearing that the demon race had returned, they were naturally shocked. Tang Zheng nodded heavily, yes, and it's not just one or two. It's estimated that the demon race's army has returned. Although the government already has a plan to deal with it, there will definitely be fish that slip through the net. If they set foot on this land, it won't just be a few people who will suffer, but everyone will be in danger. Perhaps, the few great families will be the first to be affected. The return of the demon race would definitely be a big move. The few great families were like meat on the chopping board, and they were the fattest meat. The demon race would naturally choose to attack them. If they didn't take countermeasures as soon as possible, the few great families might be annihilated. Yi Tianlei naturally thought of this point and blurted out, we must tell this news to father. Before he finished, he stopped. He had already left the Ye family and was no longer a member of the Ye family. Tang Zheng was very dissatisfied with Yi Xuanji and said, Uncle Yi, I'm telling you this news because I don't want too many people to know about it. Do you understand? Yi Tianlei wasn't an idiot and immediately understood Tang Zheng's thoughts. Whether the Ye family was destroyed or not was insignificant to Tang Zheng. Perhaps he was even happy to see it happen. Yi Tianlei secretly leaking information, Tang Zheng wouldn't approve of it. Although Yi Tianlei felt regretful, he didn't refute. He nodded and said, all right, I'll listen to you. We'll keep this news in our stomachs. Feng Xinyang's feelings for the Ye family had long been exhausted. She was very satisfied with her husband's attitude and nodded approvingly. She asked, little handsome brother, then what should we do to deal with it? Try to raise your cultivation as much as possible and let your strength reach the peak. Tang Zheng emphasized. All right, we'll listen to you. During this time, our priority is to cultivate. After leaving the Ye family, we have nothing else to do. Yi Tianlei and Feng Xinyang nodded in agreement. If there's any news, I'll inform you immediately.